Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. 200 episodes, and then a bunch of one-shots and one-offs and still offstage soliloquies and whatever else back when there wasn't quite as much of a hour limit for StreamYard.
And I am your host / time more wannabe, the brainstorm pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight? Hello, Dragon Turtle.
It's hard to believe we've been doing this for 200 episodes, and in another 7 episodes or so, it will be our 4th year anniversary, or 3rd or 4th. I can't remember.
Happy Centennial.
But I know our anniversary of starting the show is the first week of March, because the very first episode of Podcast of the Storm, I believe, was it 2019 or 2018? But it was March 3rd of whichever year we started in.
Okay. Honestly, I have a hard time remembering a lot of times. Just all this stuff starts to blend together after a while.
Well, the other problem is, in between here and there was a 2020, which was the pandemic, which seemed to drag on a lot longer than most years.
Yeah. So.
BC now means before COVID, according to basically all millennials and Zoomers. But yes, in any case, we are passing our 200th episode today, and again, I want to say about 7 weeks, we will be passing our however many years anniversary of doing the show.
I'm setting up the first thing.
Yeah. For those that don't know, usually when we do milestones or anniversaries, we celebrate them by doing video responses. And there have been a lot of video responses that we've had on the back burner for a while. So this is both we are cleaning house of all the things we haven't touched on in a while, but also it's,
also
canon to the way we celebrate, so video response time.
Right. Also, the videos, for some reason YouTube has done this thing now. Like, go to the live tab on the channel, Dragon Turtle. It shows the published videos, like the intro and the Batwoman fan edited trailer I did. So
I don't know why they separated that to where videos no longer means all the videos the channel has uploaded, but now means.
I noticed that about a month ago, and it freaked me out. And then, I pressed the live.
Yeah. I noticed it again yesterday, and it still freaked me out because I went to add the most recent episode of The Duality of Man that I do with Mr. E to the Duality of Man playlist on my channel, and there were literally only the first 2 Duality of Mans there, and I'm like, where the fuck did all the other Duality of Mans go?
Yeah,
Shit.
It's a weird thing. I'm not. 3 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, so I believe it was 2019 that we started.
I could have sworn we started in 2018 when I was still in high school, but
I think you had just graduated when we met, I think.
Right.
So
It's honestly hard to believe.
2019 feels like so like March 3rd of 2019 feels so very, very long ago. And I suppose it is currently the middle of January of 2023, so it was a while ago.
Wow. Anyway, yeah. So, like Dalton said, we are kind of cleaning house a bit. Well, also because there are a lot of things that we are also going to be covering trailers that came out last couple of weeks.
Including the trailer cringed around the world, which is the Velma thing, but we'll do that last.
Oh no, we're doing that. Yeah, I'm only 20. It was 199. Sorry, let me get my calculator out real quick.
I believe you're 22 because there's or no, you just turned 23, I think,
Right.
in November.
Yeah, because I literally had my birthday a couple months back. So
Yeah, and
um,
and the only reason I know that is because I know that there are 4 years between you and I because you were born in '99 and I was 4 years old in 1999.
right,
Jesus Christ, I feel old.
you should.
Shut up.
But yeah, got a lot of stuff. Even well, not so. Honestly, I wish we had covered this when we talked about the Batman. When we reviewed that back in last March.
That was the original. I think that was the original plan, and we just kept putting it off.
Yeah. So this is kind of a YouTuber we've covered before, but we haven't in a while.
Yeah, he's a guy we have some history with. His name is Leon Thomas, and he runs a channel by the name of Renegade Cut.
Yeah.
And he became one of our reoccurring rogues. I, our channel has a freaking rogue gallery now because I say so. He became one of our reoccurring rogues because I used to actually be a really big fan of his. Back in like 2013 through 2015 thereabouts because he used to not be completely insane. But then Trump and Gamergate and some other noteworthy political movements happened, and he and his friends went insane to
Right.
the point that at one point in I want to say it was 2017, I followed a guy who is a friend of Leon's by the name of Kyle Calgren, who is most famous for the show Browse Hell High. Um, because he was also used to be one of my favorite YouTubers. But he posted a tweet on Twitter about how he was worried about getting trolled for the video that he was making. And my naive, just trying to be, just trying to be sort of diplomatic ass was like, well, if you're worried about trolling, then try having a sense of humor about yourself and troll back. The trolls will respect you more if you're in on the joke. And then I made apparently what was horrible mistake number one, and I said praise Keck, thinking that he would at least have the wherewithal to, if he didn't understand the Kekistan meme, he would at least be able to look it up and not go completely insane. That was optimistic but foolish of me because he saw the phrase praise Keck and he accused me of being a Nazi. And again, me being rather naive and not understanding the apparent like turf war between the SJW intellectuals on the internet and the anti-SJW intellectuals on the internet. Which, to be fair, at this point, I thought these guys were mostly just neutrals. Like, I assumed they didn't really care one way or the other for or against SJWism. But that was, once again, optimistic but foolish.
Right.
So I thought perhaps he didn't. I thought perhaps this Kyle Calgren person just didn't understand the Kekistan meme. So I tried to explain the joke by explaining the Kekistan meme, and he wouldn't even let me finish typing the explanation I was making before he called me a Nazi. Me, the 5'4" disabled, gay cripple, who is also an occultist, like And apparently, when Leon, this is where Leon comes into the story, by the way. Sorry for the preamble. When Leon saw that I defined myself as, quote, an international centrist, by which I meant someone akin to Bernie Sanders circa 2016, because that's what that meant in my head. Because that was how Kyle Kalinske used it at the time, which I was, a regular consumer of his content. Anyway, so I called myself an international centrist throughout the course of this conversation, and Kyle Calgren of Braille Pub High fame blocked me. And then Leon Thomas of Renegade Cut fame saw that I defined myself using the word centrist, ignoring the context entirely, and then he blocked me. And ever since then, I went away from their content for a few months because after you've been called a Nazi by two of your favorite YouTubers, you sort of fall out of love with several of your favorite YouTubers. But I come back a few months later, and Leon and Kyle have both lost their goddamn minds. And ever since then, I've made it my mission to beat sense into Leon whenever possible.
Right.
Because he was once a smart person who I actually respected, and he is no longer, which is sad. How the mighty have fallen. And he keeps getting worse, which is the other reason why we repeatedly revisit the scene of the cut.
Right. And I watched just some of his stuff long before.
Yeah, again, presumably long before he went insane. Like to be fair, Leon and Kyle both were the types of people who believed in film theory and believed in things like themes and artistic movements in film and shit. So even now I wouldn't even endorse those particular opinions of theirs, because as everyone knows at this point, I am black pilled as fuck on the very notion of themes. But at the very least, it was just slightly pretentious, film intellectual basic bitch shit that both Kyle Calgren of Braille High and Leon Thomas of Renegade Cut were viewing circa 2013 through about 2015. And then the world started behaving in ways that they didn't like politically, and they lost their goddamn minds.
Right. So hello, Chrono. This is here.
Mm-hmm.
I tried. Honestly, I really got nothing to say. I think, to be fair, I don't even want to say this. Don, you told me this was only a 5-minute video.
I think. How long is it?
13 minutes and 9 seconds.
Are you sure it's the Batman one?
Yeah, it's the one I've had saved in my bookmarks.
Okay. Then I was mistaken. But in my defense, the reason I was probably mistaken was because there is more philosophically and logically wrong in the first minute and 20 seconds.
Right. I think that's how I agreed we should cover this. Because I saw the first minute of it. Also, hello, Ed Bruin, because he's here too.
Hi, Ed.
Right. Yeah. So this was related to the Batman movie, and a part of me is regretting now that we didn't cover it back then. I think my reasoning for it was I wanted us to kind of stay more positive.
I think that episode was also already full, and we didn't have the time to spare for Leon's shenanigans.
I think so too. Yeah. So now we're covering it. So yeah, shall we?
Banana.
Batman. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to mention this. The title of this video, as you can see on screen, is this video is not about the Batman.
He says as he spends 13 minutes doing nothing but talking about the Batman. Never mind though, because again, the pseudo intellectual brain rot got to Leon, and every time we return to him to see if he's made any progress defeating this brain rot, it gets worse. And this might be the worst example I've seen yet of the pseudo-intellectual brain rot that has befallen him ever since about 2015.
So shall we?
Bat Nana.
Bat Nana.
Okay, stop me if you've heard this a million times before. Why doesn't Batman use his wealth to solve poverty instead of punching criminals? That's a pretty loaded question, huh? The most common counterargument is Batman has the Wayne Foundation. Don't you read the comic books? The statement in this counterargument.
Okay, so Dom, because I feel like you have something set up for that. I do want to just kind of give my 2 cents first.
Go ahead.
Well, yes, I will say the way he is portraying the response and stuff is obviously, I wouldn't say disingenuous, but
it's very snarky and dismissive. But that's
thank you.
To some degree, that's just how YouTubers talk. Like
right.
Hello, if this is your first day on YouTube, we can be very snarky to each other, especially if we don't philosophically agree on shit. That's
right.
fine.
It's an interesting. I'm just gonna briefly touch on this, and we might delve deeper as we go on, obviously. But the Wayne Foundation, it's not if people actually pay attention, and it's not really ever covered that much within other media. Granted, is that he does use his wealth, Bruce Wayne uses his wealth to
Yeah, he donates to all the charities basically, and several of which he founded and created and owns.
Thank you. And he in Batman the Animated Series, rest in peace, Kevin Conroy, obviously. It is shown sometimes that he's even on board on the board of directors for Arkham Asylum. A place where his villains go to be rehabilitated, which is something he believes in, rehabilitation.
Which, I mean, to be fair to Bruce, given how much business he directs towards Arkham and the caliber of people that he forces Arkham Asylum to deal with on the regular basis, he probably should do as much as he can to patronize them as much as possible, because you send super criminals there, Bruce.
Right.
You have a duty of care both to them and to the people you subject them to.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with that, but again, I will argue that it is hardly ever shown in other media. Or briefly touch on. Hold on.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just to say he doesn't do that is the disingenuous part. That is my problem.
Okay, but Leon isn't saying that. He is actually presenting the obvious counter-argument to the pseudo-intellectual point of why doesn't Batman just use his wealth to help people instead of, beating up criminals and shit. And to Leon's credit, he is at least presenting the obvious counter-argument, and he is presenting it with a minimum of pseudo-intellectual dancing around for the moment, and then he's going to spend the next 12 minutes explaining why that very obvious in-universe logic doesn't apply for dumb reasons. And that's my main issue with this video, because he knows the correct answer. He just presented the correct answer. The correct answer is Batman does, you idiots. He donates to charity on top of also taking an active role in criminal reform by way of being the Batman. So he knows the actual in-universe logical response to this issue. My issue is that even knowing this very obvious correct answer and presenting it with a minimum of snark, he's still going to act as though it doesn't matter, because out of universe logic somehow supersedes in universe logic, and the actual correct answer isn't the actual correct answer because I say so, basically, is where he's going to go with it. And that's where my brain melts, because he knows the very obvious correct answer to this frankly brainlet query that pseudo intellectuals who don't read comics constantly come up with for Batman. And yet, even knowing this very obvious correct answer, he's still going to act like it's not a substantive answer to the question, for reasons that we will get into, which will make everyone want to hit themselves in the head repeatedly.
Dragon Turtle. Isn't a reason he is the Batman also because the city is corrupt, and even if it wasn't, the Batman does something the police legally couldn't do?
Yes, that is part of the reason, and the other part of the reason is, and this is something that does very occasionally get brought up in the comics as well. There's only so much that bureaucracies, social workers, and charities can do, even if they're not corrupt. Which several of the charities that Batman donates to are not corrupt, because, well, Bruce Wayne owns and maintains them. Therefore, he can be very, very sure that they're not corrupt. Like, they are his charities, and he is within a degree of certainty. He has made sure that the money goes where it's supposed to go. The point being, something that many pseudo intellectuals of the style of Leon will never seem to actually address, especially with regards to the defund my police, police reform arguments. There's only so much that social workers and bureaucracies and charities can do about the criminal problem before we actually have to actually get someone capable of enforcing the problem, i.e., capturing the criminals or forcing the criminals to reform in some way.
Right.
Hence, where the Batman comes in.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Dragon Turtle, it sounds like predicting it now. He's going to say it doesn't matter for communist reasons. Clearly, the way to stop crime is to give people more money and to deconstruct our culture as society, because the only reason people commit crimes is inequality, which is all from things outside of our control and undeserved.
I mean, that's part of where he goes, Dragon Turtle, but the part that where he goes first, though, is literally undermining the very notion of in-universe logic to begin with. He literally says in like the next sentence that even though that's a substantive answer to the question of why Batman doesn't help with the broader society of Gotham, we're not actually talking about the in-universe logic. Even though, and this is where I start beating my head against a wall. I think on some level, Leon knows that even most people who ask this question, are asking it in an in-universe logic sense, i.e., they actually want a substantive answer to this question in universe. They're not talking about it in this, broader abstract form that he wants it to be asked.
Anyway,
but anyway, let's actually get into the part that made my brain melt.
Right.
Batnana.
Batnana.
It is technically true. The fictional narrative of Batman in the comic books and sometimes other media references the Caped Crusaders' charitable donations. But this counter is only meaningful if we're talking about whether or not the fictional Bruce Wayne gives some of his fictional money to a fictional city, which we're probably not. The question, why doesn't Batman use his wealth to solve poverty and...
Yes, Leon, yes, that is actually... See, this is my problem. This is exactly where my brain melts. Leon, I understand that you have to see every piece of art you ever consume as a pseudo-intellectual or philosophical means to an end, usually with some kind of political component. But most people, when they ask these questions, are asking it in relation to in-universe logic. And Leon, You know, I know, everyone who's ever consumed a comic book knows, not to mention a considerable proportion of theoretical physicists in the modern era know, about this thing we call multiverse theory. I bring this up because calling a character fictional, a character that we all collectively know to be fictional, does not deflate or devalue their logical existence. I.e., unless someone is actually falsely making the claim that Batman empirically exists, calling Batman fictional is not a meaningful thing other than for a pseudo intellectual to invalidate the character. Because here's the thing, Leon. Something doesn't have to empirically exist to be logically applicable. I.e., we all understand this notion of how analogy works. We all understand the notion of how metaphor works. We all understand the notion of how logical paradigms of, hypotheticals can apply to real world situations. That's why, for example, the word Orwellian exists, because we all know and understand that while the various dystopias proposed by George Orwell might be fictional, the logic that underpins them can impact empirical reality, you know, even if the worlds of George Orwell are not empirical reality. And comic books in particular have this doubly so because, again, of the aforementioned multiverse theory, i.e., he may be fictional in our universe, but there's an entire wing of the, multiverse in which the DC universe is very much a thing, and they matter to each other, and they are no less objectively real in that universe than we are in ours.
Hey, Dom, gradual last interesting question. Is it just me, or is that one step away from, well, we know you are innocent, but it would hurt the wider narrative, so for the greater good, you are guilty anyway?
I think you might be reaching a little bit there, Dragon Turtle. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that anyone who sincerely cares about the in-universe logic or in-universe substance of the Batman mythos is either an idiot, naive, or unaware that they're asking a different question entirely, which plays the game which I'm more angry at because it plays the game of I know what's going on in your head better than you do. Because that's what he just did. He just did I know you're asking this question in the context of the in-universe logic of Batman or the in-universe logical substance of Batman, but you're not actually asking that question, and in fact no one is. And what's more, and this is the part that actually makes me feel bad for Leon, no matter how stupid he is. I think Leon has dined at the altar of critical theory and postmodern deconstructionalism so long that he actually can't understand why people consider conversations about in-universe logic to be valid. I.e., he thinks that no one is actually asking the in-universe question about Batman because he doesn't see or understand why that conversation would be in any way valid on its own or for its own sake or on its own terms. And that's the part that makes me feel bad for him because he's become so much of a pseudo-intellectual that he actually can't see the straightforward answer that's right in front of his face. And that it makes me feel bad for him. And part of why I so viscerally correct him is because I feel bad for him. I'm going to beat the obvious answer of most people actually do care about the in-universe logic, or at least how that in-universe logic pertains to some semblance of human behavior on its own terms, Leon, and don't care about the pseudo-intellectual sociopolitical implications or instrumentalization.
All right, so Drantro, fair enough. Just sounds like he's saying, well, we know that is true, but the point is to educate people so that it cannot be.
No, he's saying that it's not true because it's fictional and therefore does not matter. Even though we all know and collectively understand the notion that something doesn't have to be an empirical reality to be logically to be logically consistent or substantive, i.e., the term Orwellian exists because Orwellian societies exist regardless of whether the societies that Orwell specifically told us about exist. Or Lovecraftian is a term that exists because even though we're fairly certain, asterisk, that the entities within Lovecraft's mythos don't exist, he was obviously pointing at something that was logically worth considering, and therefore we use the word Lovecraftian when it's applicable. And also,
Right.
small print, there is a possibility that Lovecraft's entities actually do exist in some way, because he based many of his creatures in his fiction on nightmares that he actually had, and considering that some of his fiction pertains specifically to how dreams are another dimension called the Dreamlands that actually exists somewhere out there in the metaphysical universe, that is something worth considering. Not something Leon would ever consider, because that would require, things that were at one point fiction or were based on fiction to transition from fiction to nonfiction, which is another thing that can happen, but never mind.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, we gotta keep going because we got a lot of things to get through.
Yep. Bat Nana.
Instead of punching criminals is not a condemnation of Batman as if he were real, like a real guy. It's not some righteous indignation about some man, some be-batted man who doesn't exist. It's only a question about our values in the real world. This question about Batman is not about Batman. The question is really, can there...
Stop. Yes, Leon. For most people, yes, it is. And this is why I have a problem with you. You skipped over all of the actually substantive questions. All of the, does this criticism actually apply to this character or not in universe? Or does this logically apply to human behavior or not in this universe? The questions that people are actually asking. And now you, by way of pseudo-intellectual, everything artistic must be a means to an end rather than an end in itself logic, are going to skip over the actual questions that people are actually asking, the actual substantive questions, and dismiss them entirely as though they are irrelevant. And then you're going to presuppose that all of the sane people, all of the valid people, are also skipping over this logically valid thing entirely and moving right along to how does this relate to my real world and my socio-political abstraction, and or how can I use this piece of art as a means to an end rather than an end itself that is to be respected. I.e., you skipped over the things that people are actually wondering about, the things that people are actually asking, and you even know the correct answers to these questions. You know that Batman does in fact do this thing in this universe, and you also, I'm pretty sure, because of, every comic book nerd in history for like the last 50 years has known about the concept of a multiverse theory even before it became basically common knowledge among theoretical physicists, which it also now is, that because of multiverse theory, frankly, the word fictional in the context of which you're using it, of i.e. it's fictional, therefore it doesn't matter, in an omniverse that contains a multiverse, the word fictional is basically meaningless, unless you are making empirical claims about a character from fiction existing in this particular universe objectively. Everyone who does that is obviously wrong, but we all collectively know that anyone who empirically says Batman exists would be wrong. However, we also know that because something doesn't have to be empirically true to be logically true, it doesn't really matter. I.e., Batman is a logically consistent simulacra of a human being, and in the context of a multiverse, he actually exists out there somewhere in the multiverse. Therefore, we can make judgments about him in the same way we make judgments about things that logically do exist, or people that logically, do exist empirically.
All right, Dylan.
Yeah.
For the record, I don't think we're going to get through this whole video just because it's us.
Yeah, we're going to try to get halfway, and then we're going to save it for some other day, because
Yeah,
as
when
is usually the case when we do these type of videos.
yeah, it's just so. Okay.
Bet Nana.
No.
Be justice under capitalism. Capitalism does not resolve poverty. Capitalism simultaneously enforces poverty through stratified economic classes and income disparity, all the while criminalizing poverty to protect private property interests of the ruling class. Marginally improving conditions under capitalism does not serve to resolve capitalism, but to stabilize.
And there is the smoking gun that you were prematurely jumping to, Dragon Turtle. There is the "it was capitalism all along" thing that you were expecting. And I apologize for derailing you, even though you were kind of seeing ahead. I just wanted to actually address the point that he was actually making, for the sake of, I knew he was going to get there in the end, but he hadn't gotten there yet. And there was enough wrong with the portion of conversation that we actually had gotten from him that I didn't feel the need to jump ahead, i.e., address your opponent for what they're actually saying and not for what you think they might say next, I guess is what I'm saying. Especially when your opponent is already begging to right wrong in infinite numbers of ways. Like when they're already putting their foot in their mouth, you don't really need to presuppose they're going to put their foot up their ass next.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we?
Bet Nana.
Also, I got my dinner, which is hamburger helper.
Bet Nana.
The labor class enough to continue labor. Furthermore, many crimes are the products of poverty, and crime cannot be resolved under a system that enforces and criminalizes its own poverty. The contradictions of capitalism cannot be resolved. This question about Batman is not really about judging or exonerating Batman. Thus, the answer to this question.
Okay, so I have something to say about that whole crime thing and disparity. As Dalton likes to point out a lot with me, in a very joking manner, I might add, I live in the inner city. Granted, there is no real disparity I myself notice in terms of class. I'd say I'm middle class, roughly.
As I often joke, Brainstormer has the Punisher's backstory, but Captain America's moral compass.
I wouldn't say Punisher, but I've seen a lot of crime. Okay, I'm not gonna front. I've seen that. I'm not gonna get too into that, obviously, because that's kind of personal for me. Sometimes, like, I want to be honest. Sometimes the guys who do that shit, are just kind of not good people. Like, it's not even about money or anything. Don't get me wrong. Some people do that, and I can understand that. You know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to survive. It's completely understandable. However, it's such a complicated thing that I think just boiling it down to, oh, capitalism is bad, is really, I want to say, intellectually dishonest, or at the very least, not as thought out as you think it is.
Very well said, Brainstormer. And now allow me to further elaborate on what you just said, because I was kind of going that same route myself. Okay, one, Leon, your definition of capitalism is not the only definition of capitalism, i.e. your personal framework of what capitalism is and how to address it is not the only framework of what capitalism is and how to address it. Two, how do you explain the fact that crime has gone up? Because capitalism has existed for many thousands of years, Leon, and crime statistics have been variable that entire fucking time. Also, and while it pains me to make this point because I am despite, being an anti-social justice person on the left, I would consider myself on the left. I would generally consider myself to be a social democrat of the, Denmark, Sweden, etc. section of countries. And I genuinely think that most first world countries would be better off if we mimicked or at least tried to create simulacras of the institutions in those countries. That being said, there is something you have to keep in mind here, and while I find it to be a very disingenuous point to lump everything into, well, it's my individual agency, you did kind of just completely skip over individual agency as a variable, i.e., there are some people who are dirt poor and in inner city squalor or in, the worst, basically pick a negative stereotype of the poor from out the hats, and there are people within that cast that do not commit crime ever, and are only, if ever they are involved in crime, ever the victims of it. Also, something worth noting, very often the victims of the crimes of poor people are other poor people. And your quasi-Marxist analysis, and I'm not using quasi-Marxist in the sense of, well, everything I don't like is Marxist or everything to the left of me is Marxist. I'm literally 90% sure that your screed you just gave about how capitalism is the source of all the world's ills was literally either directly inferred from Marx or it was inferred from some critical theorist scholar who was themselves inferring from Marx, who in turn was inferring from Hegel, and so on. But my point one is that first of all, the main issue I have with your analysis, and by extension Marx and whoever else was, interceding in between him and you along the way, is capitalism is not a system like socialism or communism or even to some degree feudalism, i.e., no one made capitalism. Capitalism is an emergent phenomenon, and that is one of the reasons why it is superior to all of the other aforementioned systems. Because unlike socialism, which is directly a counter argument to capitalism, or at least tries to be, or communism, which was deliberately created as a counter argument to capitalism, no one made capitalism. That's what makes Adam Smith and his Wealth of Nations screed different from Marx's various, originating, Das Kapital or Conquest of Bread type screeds. Marx and Engels and all the other contributors to what is now referred to as Marxism were deliberately trying to make something that did not previously exist. Adam Smith was actually doing what you could call proto-sociology, i.e., he wasn't proposing capitalism as a thing that should exist or as a system to run society by. He was simply looking at the world as it was presented to him at the time and going, how does this work? What are the underpinning principles of this? And then, of course, he found the notion of, personal self-interest and the invisible hand and so on and so forth, and of course tied it in with marketplaces. And I'm not saying that the capitalism that Adam Smith noticed didn't have flaws or didn't have things that could be externally corrected. That's one of the reasons I'm a social democrat, you see, because I'm well aware that unfettered capitalism of, hashtag and Capistan variety would lead to things like child labor or exploitation of the workers or various other things, like something akin to what Marx was actually alluding to when he wrote his various screeds. The problem is that we no longer live in capitalism as either Adam Smith or Karl Marx would have defined it. we have, for the last century or so at least, in the First World West, been mitigating capitalism to some degree using social interventions of government or other apparatus. And yes, I would agree. We still have a certain ways to go. Hence why I'm a social democrat. But the point is, the capitalism of Marx's day, to which his criticisms actually would have somewhat applied, no longer exists. And acting as though the capitalism of 2022, which is when you posted this, or, the capitalism 2023, which is when I'm responding to it, is the same capitalism that Marx was referring to when he wrote Das Kapital, or I forget who wrote Conquest of Bread, but to say that the capitalism that we are now currently living under is the exact same and exactly as unvarnished as it was when Karl Marx wrote his various creeds, or his various other contributors wrote their various creeds in addition to his, is false. We currently live in a mixed market economy. Granted, it's not as mixed or as well mixed as you or I would like it, fair enough. But there is much more mitigation of pure, unfettered, put the children to work, let the women, burn to death in the factory fire capitalism that Marx was actually referring to. And refusing to acknowledge those differences, Leon, is one of the reasons why modern day Marxist thought is bunk. Also, Marx was excellent at diagnosing problems of his day. He was absolutely shit at how to fix them, because his solutions did not follow from his criticisms at all. Also, it is once again, for the 100th time, worth noting, there is a vast cauldron of difference between capitalism and corporatism. And most of your criticisms that you just outlined there in their Marxist framework apply far more to corporate bloat or corporatism than it does to capitalism, even in the mixed form that we currently have it. Moving on.
Right. Okay.
Now.
I'm going to read Dragon Turtle's comment first, and then we'll move on. I think someone did capitalism, but by documenting those emergent phenomena and stripping away any unnecessary systems, these sort of practices have existed long before capitalism was officially created.
Well, that's the thing. Capitalism wasn't created. Capitalism was essentially discovered. Like Adam Smith. That's why I kind of refer to Adam Smith as a proto-sociologist, because he wasn't proposing this is how we should run society. He was asking himself the question, how does society work? I'm going to go and philosophically inquire as to this. And then he wrote about his findings, essentially. He essentially wrote a book that went, this is how market systems work, in case no one has ever thought about it.
And I want to point this out. We're only a minute 40 in, and we're almost an hour now.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a feeling that at some point we are going to have to make a playlist for just this, or like the videos where we really have to do multiple.
We're going to have to make a bunch of playlists, and at some point we really do need to get back to the rewriting Ripley article. Speaking of things that we put in playlists, but
I'll be honest, when we really get like some actual when we're actually free, I honestly think that's when.
Mm-hmm. When we actually have basically nothing else to talk about, then we will finish the.
Oh, I guess.
And I swear to God, the day that we finish that article, I'm popping champagne.
That actually might be, if we were actually in the same room, that might actually be the first day I would drink champagne.
I'm gonna have to start sending you alcohols to try for Christmas.
No, I'm sorry, no. Hard no.
Oh, hush.
I'm not.
Anyway, Bet Nana.
I don't drink. Anyway.
Yeah. I barely drink either, but one drink every great now and again is not going to kill you. Trust me, I know. I verified this.
Also, I think a certain family member of mine would probably take that. So,
Oh, you're worried. You're worried Martin would pilfer the booze.
yep.
I mean, you can share with him. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if you. I'd basically be getting it for everyone in your household who wanted some.
Also, I'll be fully honest, it probably would just gather dust for years.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing about booze is you can try it once, and then if you like it, then you can save it for later. If you don't, then you can get rid of it. Or in your case, give it to Martin because I'm sure he can make it gone quicker.
Anyway,
Bet Nana.
that Nana.
And cannot be about judging or exonerating Batman either. I mean, I think we all love Batman, or we all hate Batman. I can't keep up. The Wayne Foundation counterargument applied to the real world is simply another way of saying that this is the best we can hope for. Capitalism with a somewhat more socially conscious ruling class. A teeny tiny bit less.
No, actually, Leon, this is one of the places where you and I fundamentally disagree. The more moralistic the ruling class tries to be, the more fucked we are.
I don't smoke either, Ed.
Yeah, I don't and never will smoke. My friends like cigars every great now and again, but they've offered to get me one, and I have declined entirely. My mom has started smoking since she turned like mid-40s, and it worries me constantly because my grandmother on my mom's side died from smoking shenanigans.
Also, Brainstormer, Giant Troll. Brainstormer refuses to accept unsolicited mail order alcohol from a wizard. That might be wise. Yeah, I agree, Dragon Turtle.
I mean, I'm in fair play, but you can say a lot of things about me, but you can never dispute the fact that I have good taste or that I would ever do anything to harm you. So shut up.
Still, it's just like two very tenets of my life that I don't smoke or drink.
Okay, but if we ever meet up in person, I am bringing alcohol and you are sharing a drink with me.
I'll seem like I'm sharing a drink with you.
You are sharing a drink with me when we meet up in real life, or so help me God. I'm doing some horrible curse thing to you. I don't care.
Okay. Also, Giant Troll, P.S. Don't ever send me alcohol unless it's meant to be served to guests or Molotovs. I both don't and can't drink.
Unfortunately, Dragon Turtle, I am not made of money, or I would consider doing that for you, but I make exceptions for Brainstormer because he needs to learn to live a little. But I don't have enough money to buy stuff for all my friends. I can just about handle my family and Brainstormer every year, but that's about it at the moment. Once I eventually get some kind of job, that might change, but for now, my mother and my two brothers and Brainstormer are the only people I shop for during the holidays.
Right. So, sorry, we got off track real quick. What were you saying, Dom?
The thing about him obfuscating beyond all reason the actual issue under discussion. One, Leon, you yourself opened this conversation talking about the Batman being charitable to Gotham and or the Wayne Foundation conversation. If you wanted to make a video just about how capitalism screws over the real world, you could have just done that. But because you opened this in the context of Batman and or the Wayne Enterprise example,
Shit, hold on.
it is the primary thing under discussion. And your only contribution to that discussion thus far has been, I know the obviously correct answer, but I'm going to act as though that's not the thing under discussion, even though I opened the discussion talking about that. That's been your only comfort. That's been your only contribution to the conversation thus far. Well, that, and once again, and I'm bringing this back up because it relates to something else I brought up earlier. You are completely you are completely incapable of acknowledging the difference between a system and an individual. Because if you were capable of making the distinction between a system and an individual, you could still have these conversations about capitalism and how it screws people over, derp, while exonerating the specific individual character of Batman. Because you know, as well as everyone else knows, which you just explained to anyone that doesn't know, that Batman as an individual character, i.e., as an individual exemplar of what rich people can do, does not engage in the negative aspects of capitalism you are referring to. He specifically gets himself out of this criticism.
Hello, Corrupt.
What's up? What is this idiocy? What is this?
We are responding to Leon Thomas's video about why the Batman gives money to charities conversation is A, immaterial because fiction, and B, a bad example because it encourages capitalism somehow.
That's
I'll be honest.
Okay.
We were supposed to cover this like when me and Dawn reviewed the Batman back in like March.
And
there's
it kept getting stalled. So
there's so
now
much
we're
stupid
covering it.
there's so much stupid to unpack in that one statement. So
I know. Like we both watched like 1 minute of this and we were like, we are so covering this because there's so much stupid contained in just that 1
there's
minute.
so much stupid to unpack in one statement. So for one thing, if I understand this correctly, it doesn't matter if Batman donates to charity because it's fiction. Is that one of the things you said? Am I correct?
That is one of the premises of his argument. Yes. Bear in mind that he opened this video talking specifically about that, and specifically giving what he knows to be the correct answer, which is that in universe Batman does give money to charity.
Why doesn't it matter?
Because in his view, art is a means to an end, therefore we have to apply everything to the real world, even though he just got through explaining how this example doesn't apply because fiction, even though it's logically valid, he's going to ignore it because it's invalid because fiction. Okay. And I've already spent like 20 minutes addressing that particular issue and why that particular supposition is stupid, because something doesn't have to be empirically true to be valid in a logical sense, like in the form of allegories, metaphor, or just being able to apply consistent standards from one universe to another.
Okay, and then the other thing he said was because it's like if you acknowledge his charity, that somehow encourages capitalism. Is that another thing?
Essentially, he's going if you acknowledge the particulars in this one individual case, you're basically encouraging capitalism because that gives every capitalist the permission to get off the hook for all the bad shit that capitalism does, as long as they donate to charity.
This is retarded. That's like saying that's retarded. You can make the same argument about any system. You can make the same thing about fucking communism.
I just got through it. I just got through explaining that as well. Anyway,
literally, no system is without blood. No system is without bloodshed. Like,
yeah, let's actually continue so you can actually address these points to him specifically while he actually makes his case, so that we don't, because you're basically coming in with my summary of this and haven't watched this yet. So I'm actually interested to see how much you will explode by the end of this. Anyway.
Also keep in mind we are just trying to get to the halfway mark of this for now.
Yeah, we knew we're not gonna get through the entire video today, so we're trying to do what we usually do, which is get to the halfway point and save the rest for later.
I will say one thing though. My audio on my headset is incredibly low, so while this is happening in the background, I'm trying to fix the issue. I might have to dip out if the audio still is too low though.
Okay, don't worry. There's plenty Brainstormer and I can beat into this person while you're fixing that if it needs to be if it needs to be done. Anyway, Bat Nana.
Oh yeah, one sec. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Let me. No, that's full. Okay. I thought it could have been on my end. So. All right. Yeah, that now.
Jeff Bezos, and a centimeter more Oprah Winfrey. And that's it. Isn't this perspective the result of capitalist realism, thinking that this is as good as it gets and we should all ever expect? We enter into our viewing of the Batman with this cultural bias about our relationship with wealth and the wealthy, a presupposition that helps hold.
What?
Stop. Okay, Leon. For one thing, as I just explained, it's actually kind of a bad thing when the powers that be try to be moralists on top of being capitalists, because they would actually be better. The world itself would be better served if they just were capitalists out to deliver the best product for their consumers as possible. Because when the aristocracy, the powers that be, try to be moralistic, it always ends up not even just backfiring, but always being counterproductive. Secondly, I'm sorry, but if we truly are supposed to compare the standards of Batman to the standards of every other rich fucker in the world, Batman's standards are much, much higher than your average Oprah Winfrey or Jeff Bezos. Like, even if I thought it was a good thing for pseudo, modern day aristocrats to be moralists, which I don't. I don't think them being moralistic has ever done anything good for the world. But even if I was to allow for that, and even if we were using Batman as the template, Batman's standards of charity and standards of do-goodery are much higher than your average Bezos or Oprah Winfrey. Like the second Jeff Bezos develops paramilitary technology and takes it on himself personally to go and beat up criminals and create a asylum specifically to put them in, and also donates to charities both that fund that same institution and that fund other institutions, then we can have the conversation about how modern day moralistic pseudo-intellectual aristocrats are comparable to Batman. But honestly, if we're using Batman as the standard, even the modern day moralistic aristocrats have a lot of work to do. Like, there is a massive gulf between the high standard of Bruce Wayne or Batman and the current standard of even the most charitable, most benevolent modern day aristocrat. Like, there's a gulf between Bezos or even Musk and Batman that the real world aristocrats need to do a lot more work if they want to be Batman. If they want to meet Batman's standards, even.
This entire argument is so, like, it's so bizarre to me to hear some fucking commie proselytize about the evils of capitalism when most of the people he named give millions, if not billions of dollars worth of charity to people and have charitable programs. The fuck have you done? What
Well,
schools have
I
you
mean,
built?
there's that, and then there's just the philosophical failure of the logic involved.
Seriously, it's just like, what accomplishments have you made? I fucking hate this person. Oh my god.
I swear to you, he was not. He didn't used to be this bad. Like, from 2013 to 2015, he was just your average film snob, and he would make videos about basically dissecting the themes and so forth behind movies.
Yeah.
But then the political zeitgeist went in a direction he didn't approve of, and like many other pseudo intellectuals of his caliber, he went fucking insane. He didn't go quite as insane as Movie Bob, but I think that's just because he's slightly smarter than Movie Bob. But honestly, that kind of makes him worse, because that means that he has enough intellect to make these sort of pseudo intellectual arguments, whereas Movie Bob doesn't even bother half the time.
Oh, seriously. Oh my god.
Anyway, do you have anything else to add, or shall we move
I
forward?
have nothing else to add. Like I said, I'm trying to get this audio issue under control.
Right. I'll send you the video later so you can actually watch the like 2 minutes that you missed at the beginning.
All right,
And-
thank you.
Okay. Anyway, Bat Nana.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry, I had to dip real quick.
Yeah. Anyway, Bat Nana.
Am I going through quiet for you, Corrupt? Or
So
am I coming?
everything is really quiet on the for some reason everything is really quiet on my headset, and I don't know why.
He's still trying to fix the audio issue. Anyway, Bat Nana.
Hold up the narrative and a presupposition that could be deconstructed. Isn't this fun? Talking about art, seeing how art relates to reality, trying not to get too defensive about it. I enjoy this. Let's talk about film criticism.
I dare say, Leon, that if you actually saw the videos that I've done in response to you throughout the course of this podcast, you would be getting very defensive indeed. And also, you're not actually talking about art. I.e., you're not talking about art as a thing in itself to be analyzed. You're talking about art as a means to an end to be instrumentalized. And that is my problem with 90% of all of the modern day pseudo-intellectuals who think they're analyzing art, but they're in fact analyzing around art in the most superficial and pseudo-intellectual way possible. Because you're not actually addressing the thing in itself. You're not actually addressing the thing you're supposed to be analyzing. You're trying to use the thing you're supposed to be analyzing as a cog in a larger pseudo-intellectual machine. And you only care about that machine insofar as the way it functions. You don't care about it on a intrinsic metric. You only care about what you can use it for, or rather what it can be used for in a pseudo-intellectual sort of way. You're not actually addressing the thing that people actually care about, or the reasons people actually care about it. You're not addressing the characters, or the world building, or the cinematography, or the shot composition, or any of the things people actually address. You're addressing the thing that is at best tertiary to the thing, i.e., the themes and the instrumentalization and the metaphors and the pseudo-intellectual or socio-political interpretations.
This is like the people. So there was this game. There's this game, Final Fantasy 15, right? And one of the female characters had a crop top that lets you see a little bit of her titties or whatever.
Mhm.
And like you had reviewers like this
Oh, you mean
dedicate like
Final
several.
Fantasy 7?
What's up?
Final Fantasy 7.
That was
No.
15.
Oh,
I'm talking about 15, not 7.
no. Yeah.
I know 7 had the same issue with Tifa, where like, but to go with 7, there was an issue where like Tifa wears shorts or whatever, and you can see her thighs, and you had like reviewers, like intellectuals, like this imbecile here, fucking dedicate whole fucking novels to why it's inappropriate for her for you to be able to see her fucking legs and how it's sexualization and just the most just idiotic nonsense. And like that's what this is. It has nothing to do with the medium. It's just dedicating shit to the most off-topic retarded shit. I hate this so much. Oh my fucking god.
Yeah, anyway,
It doesn't even address the art. It addresses it's basically taking your personal political issue and then addressing that and making the article about your personal or moral hang-up with the work.
Yep. That and what's more is he's not he admitted earlier on that he's not even he wasted like 2 minutes of this video confirming that he knows the in-universe logic of Batman creating the Wayne Foundation, and then explaining for like 30 seconds why, even though the in-universe logic comes down in Batman's favor and therefore his criticisms wouldn't apply to Batman, it doesn't matter, because when people are having conversations about the in-universe logic, they're not actually having conversations about the in-universe logic. They're actually having conversations about the wider implications, because that's the only way he knows how to examine the world.
It's so pretentious and stupid. It's like, if you want to make a video about capitalism, just make a video about capitalism. Why
I
attack?
literally said that like not 10 minutes ago. Like, why didn't you just make this? Like, he
Why?
nerfed his own argument by bringing in this thing that he knows is false. Like, he knows that the argument he's making does not apply to this subject matter, and yet he opened the video talking about this subject matter.
Like, Batman is just a. The thing that annoys me is that Batman is just a vehicle for him to bitch about his political awakening and how.
Yeah,
he hates capitalism.
it's never a thing in itself, or a logically produced entity in itself to be examined. It's always, how can I use this as a means to an end?
You get, like, obviously he has an audience, so why not just make a video about, like, pontificate, where you pontificate about capitalism and how bad it is.
You could have edited out the Batman-ness entirely, and it wouldn't have. But I think the reason, and this is why this infuriates me. I think the reason is because he actually wanted to shit on Batman, and so he forced Batman into the conversation just so that he could belittle, berate, and deconstruct, as he put it, Batman.
Oh,
I think it was also, again, this came out like right about when the Batman.
Yeah, it was that, and he knew people would be having the conversation about Batman, and therefore he made this video about that, and this is why I'm more sad for him than I am angry at him. I think this is what he was thinking when he was watching the Batman. I think he's actually pontificating his own personal thoughts about Batman. My problem is that he can't tell the difference between his personal framework or his personal lens or his personal perspective and what he thinks everyone else thinks. Because he opened the video talking about the way most nerd people's minds work by talking about the in-universe logic, and the obvious in-universe example of Batman actually does give, to charity and so forth. Like, he opened the video talking about the way most people's brains work in regard to this issue, and then he took a sharp left turn into, but that's fictional, so that doesn't matter, and now let me talk about how this can be used thematically to tie into why capitalism is bad, and yada yada and so forth.
Right. As much as again, we got a lot more stuff to cover.
Yeah.
So shallow.
Batnana.
If you mean this is bad, corrupt. Oh boy.
Yeah, we're doing Velma at some point in the near future, so oh boy.
That's fucking awful. Oh yeah, they infantilize.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that, corrupt. I don't want
to. Yeah, that's. I think the next topic is the Velma one.
Or tonight, or next week.
I think so.
Yeah.
I know it's on the docket for tonight. I just didn't know if it was second or third. Anyway, Batnana.
A structuralist approach to film criticism puts more emphasis on the fixed nature of language, conventions, and code to convey particular information. A structuralist analysis relies on the premise that communication has a specific goal or meaning, and that finding that meaning through...
You already skipped over the part that actually matters, Leon. Even the structuralist approach is wrong. Because you assume that the meaning is instrumental, i.e., it's about what the artist is trying to say rather than what actually exists in the universe of the arts, or in the scope of the arts, which is already wrong. Most people view art in a Socratic sense, i.e., let me examine this thing as an entity unto itself, or more commonly in my experience, what I would term the Michelangelo approach, or the Michelangelo sense, which is the value of the art is contained in the art itself, i.e., the value of the DC universe is contained in the DC universe. It's not Jungian archetypes or critical theory or socio-political utilitarianism, i.e., Batman isn't valuable because he is an extension of the dashing rogue archetype. Like he's not just a continuation of Zorro or the Shadow. Batman is individually valuable as a logically produced entity in his own right. Same thing with Superman. Superman isn't valuable just because he's similar to Hercules or Moses. He is valuable individually as his own character for his own sake and in his own right. But you already, I can get, I already kind of know where this is going, partially because I've already seen this. You are about to go, but structuralism doesn't go far enough, and we need to talk about post-structuralism. That's the long and short of what you're about to do. But even structuralism is, in my opinion, a step too far into the realms of pseudo-intellectual utilitarian abstraction rather than actually addressing the thing in itself. I hate to do this, but it's one of my favorite quotes of all time, and I got it. And the first place I heard it was actually not from Marcus Aurelius himself, but from Hannibal Lecter in the movie Silence of the Lambs. I approach things, especially art, from a Marcus Aurelius sense, which is, and again, I'm quoting Marcus Aurelius, but I'm quoting him by way of Dr. Lecter. Of each particular thing, ask what is it in itself, what is its nature. And that's what most people do in relation to art. Most people, even people who watch a lot of movies or consume a lot of art, don't give a rat's ass about themes. Or if they do, they care about themes in a secondary or tertiary sense, i.e., once they've established all the in-universe logic, all the in-universe values to be had, or all the value of the characters individually, then they might introduce a Jungian lens or a socio-political lens or a thematic lens, but only after they've addressed the thing in itself or the intrinsic value of the thing. Frankly, I think we as a society have focused way too much effort on the secondary and tertiary thematic justification of art and should focus way more on the thing in itself approach. But that's just me. That's my soapbox that I constantly return to. Anyway, Batman.
Alright, so alright, go ahead.
Right. Well, we only got 3 more minutes of this.
Thank God.
Yay.
But it's us, so we'll drag it out.
I mean, yeah, but we'll get to the other. We'll at least get to the other topics of conversation today.
Because this is also agonizingly stupid. It just feels like this video just feels like an amalgamation of different things that were swimming around in his head, and
Yeah, it's honestly like an article from like the Mary Sue.
exactly, it's just
But-
like it's not even structured. Like even articles from like these dipshit outlets like the Mary Sue at least have structure to them. This feels like just incoherent rambling, and he has like just a bunch of ideas in his head, and he just strung them together with, I guess, capitalism as the overall theme.
Yeah, because Batman is a rich, self-interested, self-actualized character. Therefore, he's basically every straw man, quasi Ayn Rand, objectivist, rich person ever.
Right.
Also, he probably just did it for fucking views and to get exposure to this shitty video.
Yeah.
And again, I kind of want to be slightly more charitable and assume that this was actually like him sitting in the theater. This is what he was thinking, and he felt like he had to make a video about it.
No, when I say that, I mean basically sometimes to get your thoughts out, you'll need to maximize your exposure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's getting views because everyone on YouTube does things to get views. I'm just saying I don't want to play the grifter card because I think everyone overplays the grifter card.
No, I don't think he's a grifter. What I'm saying is this. I'm saying, yeah, he probably does have these thoughts when he was watching the Batman, and these like were basically the catalyst. Batman was like the catalyst for this video. What I'm saying is that he probably thought even though this video isn't really about Batman, I can use the Batman as a way of maximizing my exposure
Yeah.
and getting my message out there.
Which is why he posted it like a week after which is why he posted a week after the new Batman movie came out. Which is
Yeah.
I just don't want to belittle him too much with regards to that, because I'm more
not.
in the approach of, like, to me it's actually kind of sad that he can't look at art and see art for its own sake anymore. That's the thing. While the stupidity and the pseudo intellectualness of it all gets under my skin and pisses me off, and it does, and I do feel the need to, like, beat it over the head with a logical club. At this point, I'm more in the headspace where I feel bad for these people, because I realize that they can't not do it. They can't ever turn the filters off. They can't ever turn the lenses off. They can't ever turn the frameworks off. They can't ever view art for its own sake on its own terms. They can't even do what all nerds, or at least the vast majority of us nerds do, and have a conversation about in-universe logic without going off into several layers of abstraction. And to me, that's sad, because so much of the enjoyment I've gotten out of things has been dissecting the in-universe logic or the in-universe worth of the characters, rather than the pseudo-intellectualization, be it the Jungian kind that the traditionalists do, or the critical theorist kind that the Frankfurt School types do.
Right. Okay. Shall we bat now?
We shall bet now.
I really just want to get through this fucking video.
Yep.
Signifiers and the signified is the essence of analysis. Here is that tree you've seen before. A structuralist analysis of the Batman would emphasize how Batman's character arc fits into the pre-existing conventions of film, how well it adheres to this, and how much it subverts it. A post-structuralist analysis to film criticism recognizes.
There we go. Like I said, he already was too far gone with structuralism, but he's going to go even further into post-structuralism.
It's amazing how much stupid there is in just 20 seconds.
Like I alluded to before he even got onto this, Leon, has it occurred to you that even the structuralist analysis is missing the goddamn point and has already gone into too many layers of abstraction? Has it occurred to you that people want to know if Batman is good on its own internal terms, i.e., people don't care about Batman in relation specifically to his character arc. They care about Batman as a character, and his arc is to be judged on how well it services the character and how well a full three-dimensional, well-rounded life of a character can be expressed through that arc. That's what that's where most people are. Most people aren't even approaching things from a structuralist point of view. Most people are, again, approaching it from a Aurelian view of what is this thing, how does it function on its own terms, what is the thing in itself, what is its nature. And also because, it is art, and people do need reasons to care about art. Then once they get the answer to the what is this thing, what is its nature in and of itself question, once they have that answer, then they start asking, is there anything here for me to care about? And usually it's an aspect of world building, an aspect of the world itself, an aspect of the characters, some combination of the two, how the characters interact with the world. Like, that's where most people are. They don't even get to the structuralist starting line that you went to. They end with, do I care about this character? Do I care about this world? Is there intrinsic value to either of these things? And can I express that in logical terms? That's where most people stop. They don't even care about the themes and the character arcs and all that business. And you're going to go one step further and go, and now you should only care about art as it relates to sociopolitical utilitarianism and how I can turn things into means to an end. Anyway, Bat Nana.
Alright, let's go. I think Brainstormer is dead.
No, he probably just stepped away to throw away his plate. because he
No,
was eating.
I'm back. I was had to handle something real quick.
Welcome back, Brainstormer.
Hmm.
Yeah, that now.
Yep.
Says
That now.
that words and images we choose to convey information are imperfect, and that this communication contains contradictions. A post-structuralist approach to film criticism might emphasize the pre-existing cultural biases of the creators of the film, as well as the presumption of those cultural biases in the audience. For example, the Batman addresses race and class, but spends more.
Leon, do you realize that the artist and the art are separate things? Yes, while the imperfections in the artist may color the way the art is presented, generally speaking, in a classical sense, i.e., in the sense that art exists independent of the artist and the artist is essentially a medium or a tool to bring that art from the realm of ideas into the realm of the real world. Generally speaking, the artist's input is to be minimized as much as possible, i.e., to be a good artist in like the classical sense of the ancient world, you were supposed to put your own personal bullshit aside and allow the art to filter through you as purely as possible.
I feel as if he's on, like you mentioned earlier. I also get the impression that he's incapable of appreciating art for what it is, and he's only really capable of appreciating it if it has themes that align with his political views.
Everything is a means to an end. Nothing has intrinsic value on its own terms or in its own logic. Like
Which is incredibly boring. Which is an incredibly boring way to look at something.
well, it's not just incredibly boring. Like I say, it's sad. Like I feel bad for these people because they will never know what it's like to care about these characters as though they are people in your life. Like I'm pretty sure most nerds can at some level understand this. But when I'm reading a Doctor Strange comic or a Doctor Fate comic, and the character does something stupid, I start yelling at the character. Like, what are you doing, Steven? Why did you just do? Or when the character's having a triumphant moment, I'm internally cheering because
There,
I want the character to succeed. Or when a new villain or a new mechanic of world building is introduced, I find myself like internally fascinated as though it's happening in front of my eyes.
the main reason the main reason I say it's incredibly boring is because it's like you have a lot of these people who can't allow themselves to engage with any media unless unless it has these blatant themes that like
Unless they can use it as a means to an end in some way.
exactly unless it's like or unless like I said unless it has like some socio-political themes that match with their political
Yeah, but like what I was finishing off what I was just saying, the reason I feel bad for these people is they will never know the joy of caring about things. And I know the way we approach art isn't necessarily the way we approach life, but very often these people do make the argument that the way we approach existence should be the way we approach art and vice versa. So I do wonder how much this is how they view all things or all people. Like, do they actually view the actual IRL people in their lives this way? Do they view the do they not can they not connect to actual IRL existent people
that that's why
in the way of this person exists for their own sake or has intrinsic value that doesn't relate to utilitarianism for me?
That's why I say it's a really boring way to view art or anything because you don't engage with anything on it like you don't have that same like you described when you see a character that character is no longer just a vehicle to promote your cause, it's an actual functional person,
Yeah.
whereas they don't see that, they just see like a group of a bunch of pictures that exist to convey like to convey their political
They
opinion.
they don't they
Like
don't care about they don't care about things for their own sake. And
Exactly. They
uh,
don't
uh,
connect with it. And that to me is incredibly boring. It's sad, but it's also incredibly boring because you just can't get any joy. At least in my opinion, you just can't derive any joy from that. Like
well,
there
yes, of course, it's boring. I'm getting kind of empathetic or existential just pity from it, because it's like so much of the joy in my life comes from being able to engage with things as though they are valuable for their own sake. So if if someone took that away from me, if someone took away my ability to value people, things, the world's existence for its own sake, what would that how much of my soul, for lack of a better word, would be taken away from me in that?
I just honestly find like a joyless like to me it just comes off as a joyless existence. Like I make jokes about like I love cringe and shit. I do, but even in like cringe or whatever, right? Like the shit that I like, I can at least take some pleasure and derive something from that. But when you can't like say you can't see like a piece of media. Say you like Doctor Strange, right? But
Yes.
you've crossed the event horizon like they have, and you can't enjoy it anymore because it doesn't parrot back to
Strange is a
you.
misogynist because
Exactly,
Wanda is a woman and she's the
exactly,
villain, therefore, yeah.
exactly. It's like you can't even enjoy this thing that brought you joy anymore because all you can see are buzzwords and things that you've been taught. And I have so part of the reason why I have this opinion, and I'll cut this
Hmm.
short because we're running out of time, is because I used to be like this. So I'll give you an example. There are certain Twitter accounts on YouTube. I'm sorry. That was a retarded statement. There are certain Twitter accounts on Twitter that I could never, that I couldn't allow myself to enjoy because when I used to be in SJW and shit, my friends would tell me, "Oh, don't engage with this person or read these tweets because this person is transphobic." So I rob myself of the ability to enjoy any type of material that my friends told me is on a list somewhere.
Immoral in some way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that shit was kind of lame because it's like I like this, but my moral and but my artificial morality is telling me that I can't
Yeah,
enjoy
like
it, you know?
I like this even though morally I shouldn't, based on my own standards and so
Yeah,
forth.
and it just isolates you, and you just feel so bored with life because it's like I can't enjoy anything. I guess I'll enjoy this approved list.
Yeah, and again, for the people who, and I will give SJWs props for this, because it is the one way in which they're consistent. Because there are quite a lot of SJWs who will apply the same standards to art or fiction as they do to their real life, which leads me to the conclusion that if this is how they see characters, if this is how they see the worlds, of various different universes and so forth, for those that feel the need to be logically consistent with that on an existential level, that's also how they see the real world and how they view the people in their own lives. Which means that let's say they have a best friend, they can no longer see that best friend as a being in their own right or as something that has intrinsic value. They have to view it in a politically utilitarian sense of, does this person align with my political worldview or not? And
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I point this out, because there are people, and there are many examples of this, who will literally like disown their own parents because, well, my father or my mother supports Trump and that's immoral, therefore I have to disown them entirely. Did you see the video of the woman who like was giving her father's eulogy and was like, um, I'm sorry that you died before I could convince you to be a moral person, but at the very least, your death gives me the motivation to exist in defiance of you and to deliberately spite you in all my actions, because being the exact opposite of you will at least make me a moral person. Have you seen that video?
That's horrible. What?
Okay, so I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah,
guys.
but we have to move on. Bat Nana.
I'm gonna go use the bathroom. You guys go ahead.
Bat Nana.
More time ignoring grievances related to race and class than it does acknowledging these grievances. Mere absence is not immediately meaningful, but absence as contrast might be. For example, the absence of a floating pink elephant in the Batman might not be meaningful to a post-structuralist because there is no opposite of this, no signifier of its contrast.
What the fuck is he talking about?
He's saying that if something that is meaningful in their framework is missing, then that means the art in question is making a statement about the thing. Like for example, the fact that there are homeless people in Gotham is either an excuse to bash the concept of homelessness in a political sense, or it's tacitly condoning homelessness because it's not addressing it. Because again, everything is to be seen through this lens, and everything is a means to an end, and nothing can ever be an end in itself, or ever be a separate world entirely. That's what he's saying. He's saying that unless you specifically address my pet issue, you either are ignorant of my pet issue, or you are actively being villainous and encouraging the problem that I want addressed.
It's still idiotic.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Banana.
But the absence of significant commentary on criminogenic conditions in a film that frequently references crime and comes to its own conclusion about how to resolve crime might be meaningful to a post-structuralist. At the risk of being reductive, a structuralist analysis of a film places greater emphasis on the author, signifiers, and signified as the primary subjects of examination.
And they're both wrong, Leon. They both have already missed the goddamn point entirely. And with regards to your post-structuralist analysis of poverty in the Batman, has it occurred to you, like ever, that meaningful things can exist outside of your framework entirely? That's another one of your problems. Is you think that either something is addressing your framework, or it is indifferent to your framework, or it is spiting your framework. That is the very essence of a false dichotomy. Or in this case, I suppose, a false triad, because there is at least the neutral position in there. But point being, there are things that exist entirely outside of your framework. I.e., there are philosophies of the world that exist entirely outside of your framework. There is also the possibility that the art in question is not being used in a utilitarian sense at all. I.e., no one is trying to make a philosophical point with this piece of art. They are simply presenting a thing in itself to be examined on its own terms, either Socratically or Aurelianly or Michelangeloidly. And yes, there are other perspectives even than the ones I gave. I just offered three perspectives that exist directly and contrary to your perspective, where everything has to be utilitarian. I approach things more from a thing in itself approach, where the meaning of the thing is contained in the thing, not in the person who made the thing, not in what the person who made the thing wanted it to be, but in the actual concrete substantive meaning of the thing in and of itself. I.e., a baby isn't valuable simply because of its parents. A baby is simply valuable because things are intrinsically valuable sometimes. And likewise with artistic creations. A clock isn't valuable because the clockmaker made it for a specific purpose or wanted it to have a specific function. The clock is simply valuable for its own goddamn sake, and should be examined Socratically or Aristotelianally on its own fucking terms. Moving on.
Right.
Bet Nana.
1 sec. No.
I'm back. Hey, I gotta go for a second. I'll be back. I'll be back.
Uh,
I'll try to. I guess something just came up.
Okay.
All right.
We will keep doing corrupt. Although if we get to the Velma thing before you come back, we'll stop so that you can actually be here to address the Velma thing.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know, like 2 minutes, I think. All right.
Bet Nana.
Whereas post-structuralist analysis of a film places greater emphasis on the viewer, the existence of the viewer and the viewer's world between the signifiers and signified. Just to be clear, this is not a complete definition of post-structuralism or a proper lesson. Also, in reducing these terms this way, I run the risk of inaccuracy, but this is also, a YouTube video.
Okay, but okay, I don't need to address the, ideal of true and perfect post-structuralism. I can simply address the terms in the way you have presented them. And in the way you have presented either structuralism or post-structuralism, you are once again missing the goddamn point. Because you are attempting to utilitarianize something that is supposed to have intrinsic sentimental value. I.e., the value of a piece of art is not its Jungian archetypes, traditionalists, and it's not its socio-political gobbledygook, critical theorists. The value of a thing is contained primarily in the goddamn thing, and not even necessarily in how the thing functions, always. And that's the other thing. That's the compromise that sometimes you can reach with these people of, well, at least if it has the right function, then it's okay. No. Usually, when you're talking about art, even looking at it from a utilitarian functionalist perspective is wrong. The value of a thing is contained within the thing. And sometimes the value of a thing is also expressed in the way the thing functions. That is true, form following function and all that business. But to view the function as more valuable than the intrinsic value of the thing is also usually counterproductive. So even looking at it, well, if it functions properly, then okay. No, that's the way you're supposed to look at an appliance or a piece of technology. It is not how you are supposed to look at a piece of art. Art does not have art should not have a single purpose in mind, i.e., even if the artist has a particular goal in mind, it doesn't mean that the value of the thing is contained within what that artist wanted. I.e., many times art is actually more meaningful than the artist in question realizes. In the same way that physically someone cannot understand the full extent of their own strength, artistically, a good artist very often ends up conveying more meaning than even they are consciously aware of. And that is a verifiable thing that exists, irrespective of any philosophy. But the fact that your philosophy doesn't allow for that, the idea that a person can create something that is actually more meaningful than they intended it to be, means that your philosophy is incomplete and inaccurate because it does not account for things that verifiably exist. Yeah, Bet Nana.
Okay. Bet Nana.
Here is a structuralist approach to explaining the Batman. In the beginning of the film, Batman's inner monologue mythologizes crime in Gotham City. We experience it as a force of nature, or human nature, something in the air, or something in our blood, but in either case, inevitable. Batman is skeptical.
Okay, so I want to talk about that as like a writer.
Please.
So, for one thing, that beginning monologue is a summation of where he is in his headspace currently in his second year as Batman.
Mhm.
And it is clearly flawed if you were actually looking at it from anything else besides the viewpoint you're currently looking at it.
Yep. That's the other problem with a lot of these interpretivist approaches to art is very often people will refuse to differentiate between a character's perspective and the actual world being presented. Like this is completely immaterial to this particular video, but one example of this that keeps coming up in my mind is whenever the mysterious Mr. Enter, who's a YouTuber I really like a lot, talks about Rick and Morty, he always confuses the philosophical outlook of Rick Sanchez, the character, and the philosophical outlook of the world itself. He doesn't seem to be aware of the fact that Rick may be the smartest person in the room and may have the most informed position on something, and still have the potential of being wrong because the world doesn't operate the way Rick thinks it should operate. For example, he hates Pickle Rick because he can't tell the difference between the writers being lazy and expositing about Rick's inner monologue and the character of Dr. Wong being able to dress down Rick because her skill set actually allows her to understand something Rick cannot, even though Rick is de facto smarter than her. Anyway, but that's my point, is that very often in these kind of analyses, there's a refusal to differentiate between the way a given character thinks about the world they operate in versus how the world actually functions existentially.
I mean,
Welcome back.
anyway, yeah, I have to go, so I'll catch you guys next week. I have to head out. Sorry about that.
Alrighty.
That's okay.
All right,
I could kind of tell you weren't feeling well based on your voice a couple of minutes ago, but I hope you feel better. Corrupt.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later.
Bye. How far are we into this video?
Just a minute left.
Okay, we can do this.
We're on 5 minutes, and I said we'd stop at 6. So
okay, so yeah,
yeah,
we can do this. Batman.
Batman.
Critical of our humanity and believes more should be done to fight crime. Batman is visually represented as Shadow, as the darkness of night. His first targets are thrill-seeker criminals performing unambiguously vindictive acts on complete strangers. Randomized violence with no goal except the act itself and perpetrated by a stylized evil visage that is...
Could this possibly at all be because this character is Batman, and that is how the character of Batman is supposed to function? Could it possibly be that this isn't making an existential statement about the world of the movie, and in actuality just portraying Batman as Batman is nominally supposed to be portrayed in most consistent versions of the character ever since the fucking Golden Age? That is who Batman, that has been who Batman has been as a character to some degree in every iteration of the character that has been meaningfully accurate to the character.
And regarding the criminals, you can't tell me that there aren't. Not even to get into real thing. It's just the perfect introduction to the Batman that he is just going after legit bad dudes,
And also Gotham. This is another thing that's been at least nominally consistent within most versions of Gotham that the people who enjoy Batman will accept, is that Batman's Gotham is a wretched hive of scum and villainy, and in order to take advantage of the fact that criminals are, quote, a superstitious, cowardly lot, Batman utilizes darkness, fear, and the gravitas that his physical superiority and technological superiority grant him to weaponize criminals' own fear against them. That's like Batman's own stated MO.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, Batman.
Batman.
completely dehumanized. When his voiceover monologue is complete, his first spoken words are, "I'm vengeance." uh, at the climax of the film, Batman recognizes that vengeance is not the same as justice. Batman leads his people out of darkness and toward the light, visually represented by his torch and finally by the dawn that shines.
In other words, the straw man you are painting of Batman and his world is proven to be wrong by the conclusion of the movie. Could that possibly be a considerable vector of what is being presented here? I.e., once again, there is a difference between the way the characters are portrayed or the way the characters think of themselves and the way the world around them functions. Another great example of this outside of the Batman context is the show House. Much like Rick Sanchez, House, the character, is the smartest person in any given room, and in most philosophical conversations between himself and his coworkers, he is proven to be the most philosophically coherent and therefore the most philosophically defensible. However, the world, i.e., the existence in which House finds himself, despite being the most philosophically coherent and the most intellectually superior character, can still be proven to be in the wrong, even though his suppositions are arguably correct and he's not painted as some kind of straw man. I.e., the universe of House can sustain itself irrespective of the fact that it accurately portrays House's counterarguments to it. Because a well-rounded world can internalize the criticisms of various characters who are intelligent enough to examine their world, and also operate in a different way, because how someone thinks the world should operate and how the world actually does operate can be different, even though the smartest person in the room thinks a certain way. Moving on.
Right. It's just so much stupid. I really don't know how to.
Parse it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, Batman.
Nana.
Shines on them on this new day. A structuralist analysis might conclude that justice outweighing vengeance is the authorial point of the film, or the message of the film, or the meaning of the film, because it is laid bare at the climax where it's supposed to be, and because it is foreshadowed many times, and that this is the progression of the protagonist's character arc. It was done.
And even this would still be missing the goddamn point of the thing, because even if this is the meaning the author wanted to put there, it doesn't mean it is the sum total of the meaning that might actually be there. Because once again, the author can want to do all kinds of things, but just because they want a given meaning to be presented in a piece doesn't mean it actually organically belongs there, or that they can successfully incorporate what they want into what is actually there. Also, any truly good piece of art cannot be limited to one single perspective. So even if an author creates a story with a point in mind, if they're a good author, the world they create will be three-dimensional enough to be able to sustain multiple interpretations of meaning, because the world we live in does not have a single goal or a single meaning in mind. It is a multifaceted world with multifaceted levels of meaning, and any truly good piece of art will follow suit, much like the perfect example of this, which is Todd Phillips' Joker. We don't know what he wanted to put there, and to some degree that probably might be deliberate, because Todd Phillips appears to understand the notion that it's not my job as the author to decide what the meaning is. It is my job as the author to provide as many different kinds of meaning as I can and let the audience ferret it out for themselves, because the world in which this particular Joker operates is three-dimensional enough to, much like the real world, have multiple different kinds of meaning at once, simultaneously. Moving on. God, that every time I hear someone try to utilitarianize art, it boils every last fiber of humanity in me. Oh god. While you're setting up the next one, I just realized I haven't been wearing my necklace, so I'm going to go get my necklace.
I'm back. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about the about it. So moving on to the next thing, which is a trailer. Just vary things up, I suppose. The Evil Dead Rise official Red Band trailer.
Okay, I'm back. I had to go get my necklace. I realized I wasn't wearing it.
So yeah, I just put up one of the trailers we had just to kind of give us some variety here.
Mm-hmm.
The Evil Dead Rise official Red Band trailer. Dawn and I actually had a brief conversation about this the last time we hung out. We'll get into it.
Yeah. Long story short, I didn't really like it because I think it's missing a lot of what makes Evil Dead Evil Dead.
Right. I have like well, I'll discuss it. We'll discuss it. I'm just okay. Anyway, shall we? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. I thought I was I muted myself by accident or something.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Banana.
I don't know. Is there a? I'm not gonna say.
Groovy, because that's Ash's catchphrase.
Right. I was gonna say we say the phrase that they read from the book, but I do not want to summon any demons, and also I can't remember it. So.
Collectu Parada Nicto is the one you're thinking of.
No, that's the one to protect yourself, like an incantation to protect yourself from the book. I'm talking about the one they read from the book.
Oh, the one to summon shit. Honestly, I think we'd be better off saying the protective one, but nevertheless, I think Groovy is more straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. Groovy.
Groovy.
Hold on, let me see if this has subtitles. No, it's auto-generated. Every fucking time it's auto-generated.
Okay. In any case, Groovy.
Groovy.
What's up, sis?
Okay, nothing yet. I really have to say, to be honest.
Yeah, no, not enough to go by. Although I will say I'm not a big fan of this color scheme. It's quite a lot too dark for me. Because
I think it was the
Evil Dead at its best has always been a horror comedy, and therefore it's always been good about colorization and stylization.
Well, I'll talk about that more when we get more into it, because I don't know if we'll talk more about it. I'm just
Groovy.
Groovy.
Yeah, the most beautiful dream. It was the perfect day. And all I could think about was how much I wanted to cut you all open and then climb inside your bodies.
Okay, so to kind of play devil's advocate, I don't think it's too dark. I think that's just the setting that they're in, which is like an interior that's in a blackout or something. But I appreciate that this looks cinematic.
But as we've said with many other trailers, you can do darkness in a stylized way that is at least, if not colorful, at least visually striking.
That's
And I think
fair.
the problem here is it looks just too washed out and, for lack of a better phrase, normal looking to give the appropriate stylization.
Mm. Okay, I'm just trying to be impartial here because I'll be honest, I'm not in. Well, when we get more into it, but I'm trying to be as partial as I can here and give it where it's credit is due. Because
Yeah, because I'm going to be ripping this a new asshole probably every time we pause. So you being impartial is probably not a bad thing.
all right, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a big Evil Dead fan myself. I will say if. I think this is a weird. It's trying to be both like the reboot from 2013 and sort of.
I think it's supposed to be a sequel to the reboot from like 2012.
I honestly don't know. I really.
Which, I mean, to be fair, I really didn't like the 2012 reboot at all. It too was also missing everything I like in Evil Dead. But so if it's in the same universe as that one, then that would explain why some of my complaints are consistent between the two. But even so, I'm like, I honestly wanted to see Ash's adventures continue from the events of Ash vs. Evil Dead. So like as long as Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell exist and are of young enough ages that they can still do their thing, there is absolutely no reason to reboot Evil Dead. None whatsoever.
So, shall we move on?
Yep. Groovy.
So that we could stay one happy family.
Bless you.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I paused on like 50 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Got 10 more seconds. My bad. I think I shook my teeth a little with that sneeze.
It was one of those. But in any case, relating to the actual trailer, I have made many arguments about how when teenagers are stupid enough to read the thing that's like, don't read this under any circumstances, I lose a lot of empathy for them. And also because my self-insert character from the Lionheart universe, his job basically is to act as the both like fixer for and the preemptor of these sorts of teenagers meddling with things beyond their ken bullshit circumstances that happen in horror movies. All I thought of in that scene was, and this would be where Draven would come in and smack the both of them to get them to stop doing the stupid thing and then take the book.
Well, I don't know if they did it themselves, to be fully honest.
I mean, she's obviously maybe had a few and is like reading this as a joke to her friends. So
no, there's literally nothing we've seen yet that shows that.
She's smiling and giggling as she's reading it, and then she looks over at them and smirks.
It's possessed. Did you not? You couldn't tell that.
Wait, what?
Yeah, the mom is possessed. She's not a teenager. She's a mom that's been possessed.
Oh, I thought it was the main. It was the main girl
No,
reading it.
you are. And I thought I had bad eyes.
Well, the cinematography is too fucking dark, and they look too much alike.
They're grown-ups, not teenagers.
Well, then they're even more stupid, and they even more deserve to be smacked upside the head by Draven Lazarus Macbeth, the appraiser.
You done?
Yes, for now.
Yeah.
Groovy.
When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother,
What is this, Daddy? I found it.
what will I be?
So, like I said,
Okay, aside from anything else, I absolutely love this song, and I've always loved this song. Like every version of it I've ever listened to, I love it.
Again, I don't know if I agree with like the it's too dark. I don't really see that personally.
I can't see. The problem is I can barely see anything, and that implies to me that it's too dark.
That might be a you thing, Dalton.
Or it might be a StreamYard fucking with the video quality thing. Who knows? But I do remember watching this on my phone and thinking the same thing of someone please get a stylized light in there somewhere.
It looks fine to me. Granted, I'm watching this on a computer. You watch this on a phone, which, to be fair, both have very different.
Well, what's the video quality thing on this video right now?
I have to keep it at 480 because if I put it any higher, it's just going to do that weird like clipping
Skipping thing?
Yeah. So,
Okay, well, I will temper some of my complaints then based on I'm not getting the best quality of video because we literally can't. But I will say I remember watching this when it came out, and it was still too fucking dark and still was in massive need of stylization.
I watched this multiple times too, on my TV, and it looked fine.
Okay, so maybe it is a quality issue, but nevertheless, a good stylized version of this wouldn't, like, you would be able to still see it regardless of whatever quality you were watching it on or whatever format you were watching it on. Especially given that it's a trailer and it's supposed to advertise things.
Right. It also has like again, I'm trying to be impartial here, so but I also noticed that it has some really creative, not here obviously, but later on it does show some creative like camera work and stuff. So it has some creativity. I'm not gonna lie. Again, it's not my thing for either.
It's not the worst generic horror movie I've ever seen. It's just it looks very much like a generic horror movie, and none of this is registering as Evil Dead to me.
I won't disagree with you there. Like it doesn't feel Evil Dead to me. I'll get into that when we get more into the trailer. So
yeah. Anyway, Ruby.
Groovy.
Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? Here's what she said to me.
Open up now.
You don't look so good, Mom.
So, okay, so this is kind of like we're here. I wanted to like kind of talk about my feelings about this.
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, I agree. Like Evil Dead, to me, at the very least, it has always been a horror comedy. A little more comedy than horror. Granted, I've seen the movies kind of out of chronological
order.
Yeah. I saw Army of Darkness first, and then like Evil Dead 2, and then the series Ash vs. Evil Dead when it first came out.
Which by the way, that was also meant Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell still got it as
Right.
far as Evil Dead goes.
So, and it's just me because I'm not like a big like horror guy. I'm always prefer a horror with like a campiness to it.
Hmm.
And obviously, this is like very like I guess the closest you could really say is like Blumhouse kind of horror.
I mean, yeah, kind of like a Blumhouse or what the frick is the studio that made the Conjuring movies?
Blumhouse.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Blumhouse. Blumhouse is to 2022 what Blue Moon was to the 90s and 2000s.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Blue Moon had some really funny like movies.
Yeah, and to be fair to Blumhouse has a lot of really good ones like Happy Death Day. I think Split and Glass were both Blumhouse. Like there are a lot of really good Blumhouse horror movies, and I'm glad that there does exist a studio whose job is basically to make like low budget horror, sci-fi, and fantasy type movies.
Right. It's just like it feels like it is kind of focusing a bit too much on horror.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't have the presence or like the flavor. I guess the word I'm looking for is the flavor that I go to Evil Dead for. Honestly, and I think I said this on Thursday when we talked about it, the best modern remake of Evil Dead was Cabin in the Woods. That's what I would expect if anyone ever tried to remake a modern version of Evil Dead without Sam Raimi or Bruce Campbell. That's basically what I want from a Evil Dead remake, is basically what Cabin in the Woods did. And honestly, you could really have just made that a Evil Dead movie and have sequels revolving around what happens now that the gods are loose thing. That would have been good.
But yeah, and like how they have the Deadites, which are clearly more resembling. That's why, like, I thought Evil Dead 2013, because they look more like those type of Deadites.
Yeah, they look more like just generic zombies, and they don't scream Deadite as much.
Or possessed person. Like,
yeah, but in any case, like as we were just getting over, like I think this is a sequel to that 2012-2013 version.
I honestly cannot. I don't know. Like, so many things are so confusing these days when it comes to like releasing these movies.
And again, like, as long as Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell exist and are capable of creating sequels to or continuations of the original Evil Dead, I'm confused as to why anyone would bother trying to remake it. Because it as long as those two are still alive and kicking and are capable, like as long as Sam Raimi can think of something interesting to happen in the timeline of the original Evil Dead, no one would ever ask them to remake a thing. Or if someone was ever going to remake Evil Dead, the best Evil Dead remake we could hope for has already happened, and it was called Cabin in the Woods.
Right. Anyway, shall we?
Groovy.
Nothing a big old kiss from you won't fix.
Yeah. I mean, again, it has some really cool like camera work, and it's at least being somewhat practical with some stuff. But
yeah,
it's not Evil Dead to me.
Yeah, it's
again, to me, like if anyone, if there are people that like this, fine, but you know, you can like it. I'm just,
Yeah, but I've not seen many Evil Dead fans praising this at all. In fact, most people I've known that are Evil Dead fans don't even like the like 2011, 2012 one.
that was 2013.
Are you absolutely sure? Because I could have sworn it was like 2011, 2012.
I will look this up just so we're not talking out our asses here.
Because I could have sworn it was before 2013. Because I was already out of high school and getting ready to go to college in 2013. And I remember I was in like junior year when the Evil Dead remake came out.
Okay, so Evil Dead Rise is a sequel to this.
I figured because
Yeah.
it's pretty much in the same style as the other one.
And released April 5th, 2013.
Okay, so booger me, I guess. Well, no, I would have still been in high school when that happened because I didn't graduate until June. But yeah. Okay, so point being, a lot of people when
Also,
the Evil Dead remake came out were like, what the fuck is this? We want a continuation of the original timeline. And then Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell heard that and went, okay, let's do that then. And we got Ash vs. Evil Dead, which was a much better continuation of the story than 2013's version.
Again, it's just like, while it does seem to have blood in it and stuff, the weird thing is it makes me squirm in terms of the type of bloody horror that it is, which comparing, like, kind of remembering what everything I've seen from like Ash vs. Evil Dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when there is blood, and don't get me wrong, it gets my skin crawling when I see that blood, just because I don't really do well with blood.
Mm-hmm.
But within the context, it is.
Evil Dead has always been good about being so over the top and borderline comedic that it almost evokes like Hammer horror.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
And I'm 90% sure that I've heard interviews with Sam Raimi that said he was deliberately trying to evoke Hammer horror. Yeah. And if I'm wrong and talking out of my ass, then I apologize. But I'm pretty sure Sam Raimi was trying to evoke the kind of like 1930s through 1960s Hammer horror, over the top, almost humorous horror, a la like a Vincent Price or a Christopher Lee type thing.
Right, but don't get me wrong. Like sometimes Evil Dead, like original stuff, and when it did blood and gore, it was so visceral that it would evoke the feeling from you.
I think the first Evil Dead is the one that's the most, strictly speaking, serious of the bunch. Before they really realized kind of what they had to work with.
I don't know. It's just like it's weirding.
There are a lot of horror movie franchises that focus on people in a cabin messing with shit that aren't Evil Dead.
They're in an apartment complex.
Okay, that's kudos to them for at least making it look like a cabin.
Yeah, it's like I think this is technically. I honestly don't. I don't know if this is set. It seems like it's set in a time not in like the 2000s or 2010s. Maybe I heard people saying 80s, but I honestly could not.
I just figured it was contemporary because it looked contemporary to me. But if it's set in another era, then fine. They didn't really do much to period piece it then, if that's the case.
Honestly, I'm not even sure myself. Like, don't quote me on anything I've said. I just cannot tell. To be fair, like,
yeah, the most enjoyment I've gotten out of this trailer has been, number one, imagining what my self-insert character from the Lionhearted universe would do in this situation, and number two, I really love Que Sera Sera. So like, those are the two positives I can say for the trailer. Is it made me giggle over what my self-insert character from the Lionhearted would do in this situation, and
Dalton.
any trailer that uses Que Sera Sera is at least gets a point for using that song.
All right. Ruby.
Yeah, groovy.
Future's not ours to see.
I'm getting us out of here. I promise.
You'd be a good mom someday, Hannibal.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. You know how to lie to kids.
Like, again, there are some good shots here. I'm not going to deny that, and I think if Dalton was seeing it on maybe a better screen or something, or could see it in better quality.
Like, I like the shots with like the almost candle colored yellow to it. Those shots look okay.
I think the major issue is, like with the way you said, is that I think most of these shots are shot inside and they're kind of low lighting and stuff. So I think that could be the issue, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, like the candle color yellow shots were okay, and the one shot with like the like blue lights in the like underground area that looked okay. That looked okay to me, but everything else just looks way too fucking dark and way too quote unquote realistic to evoke Evil Dead or any sort of fun.
Right. Yeah, I think that's also a thing. It's like, also found out the 2013 Evil Dead movie was only an hour and a half long.
Oh yeah, it's very short.
That surprised me, is all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you said, like if this is playing it very straight. Don't get me wrong, there have been Evil Dead has played some things straight, but this like just completely serious. Which I get, like in actuality, this would be a really terrifying situation, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, part of what makes Evil Dead fun is they tried to play the first movie straight, and then they got like increasingly more over the top and increasingly more comedic as the series went along, and they kind of found their niche in doing so.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't know. I will say, well, we'll get to it. I'm just Joey?
Yep, groovy.
Groovy.
That thing with the blood is okay.
Mom?
Mommy's with the maggots now.
So, I actually like that line. I think that's actually really cool.
Yeah, like there are moments here that make me think they might do okay, but at the same time, I'm not gonna rush out to watch this like I rushed out and binge watched Ash vs. Evil Dead.
I will say this: the actress who's playing like the possessed mom, is actually doing a really good job. Even though like you can't really see her or anything, like you said, I think she did a pretty good job playing like an evil possessed being.
Yeah, she's hamming it up, and that's good. But the weird thing is, she is hamming it up like you would expect a person in an Evil Dead universe to do, but the universe around her is not doing the same, and that's part of what makes me go,
honestly,
yeah, okay, this feels weird now.
Is it me, or is anyone getting like Drag Me to Hell vibes? You know,
yes, it's a lot closer to Drag Me to Hell style than it is to Evil Dead.
Which the weird thing is, it also had bits of comedy that juxtaposed the actual like horror.
All of Sam Raimi's movies do, because he's very good about he's a classic like horror nerd in very much the same way as I am. So he's always aware of like how to add quasi comedic flavor to things.
Right. Okay. Shall we?
Groovy.
Groovy.
What will be, will be.
yeah, it's weird. Like I don't honestly I don't dislike it, but I also don't love it. Like it's just like it sounded like one of those films like give me more of a meh kind of reaction.
Yeah, I might watch it once and then immediately forget that it exists, kind of like I did with the 2013 one. Like I watched it once and it was like, why would anyone remake Evil Dead? Why wouldn't you just do a continuation? Next.
Okay, so I don't know, like what do you want to do? Velma or Ant-Man?
Uh, Velma. Just
Nah,
get it done.
I really wish Corrupt was here though. Like I kind of would like to see.
Yeah, I want to see his reaction to Velma. I mean, we could do Ant-Man and then save Velma for next week, so he'll be here when we do it.
You know what? Yeah, let's do that. So sorry, folks, if you wanted us to cover Velma, that'll be next week.
Yeah, we will do that next week.
Okay, let me set up the Ant-Man one.
Dragon Turtle, we will save the cancer for next week so we can also give it to Corrupt. Because Corrupt is not here to diagnose the cringe, and he is the cringe meister, so he is the expert in all things cringe.
Plus, I've seen a bit of that trailer, and holy shit!
I've watched it through 3 times on 3 different channels because, funnily enough, the reaction was so negative. HBO Max disabled the comments
Of course, I did.
because we can't actually use our audience as a focus group to tell us where we fucking go wrong. We have to morally grandstand as though they are the ones in the wrong.
All right. Okay.
Everything fucking wrong with Hollywood these days.
So yeah, so we're gonna watch Marvel Studios Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantum Mania trailer. I've seen
Yeah.
this, and I do have a few things to say. Not really too much, but let's go on and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
I guess just banana.
And Nana.
Banana.
You're an interesting man, Scott Lang. You're an Avenger. You have a daughter. But you've lost a lot of time, like me.
Okay, so it's weird. Like Ant-Man, honestly, I actually kind of like those movies. They're fun, at least. They never really get the much credit, or not credit. Honestly, I feel like they could have done more with it.
They're kind of the also-ran of the MCU, like everything else, and also Ant-Man.
Yeah, it kind of sucks because honestly, on paper, that is a really interesting character that I would love to see explored, but they never really.
They don't really tap into his potential, but to the credit of Quantumania, I think they are tapping into his potential more here by having basically the entire movie set in the quantum realm and exploring that aspect of the character.
Right.
Because I think the perfect niche for Ant-Man is like in between, stuck like in the middle of Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy type energy, and like bringing in Fantastic Four and X-Men stuff. That's
Right.
kind of the niche that Ant-Man finds himself in, and I think one of the reasons they're setting the entire movie in the quantum realm, aside from maybe my constant whining that I want a movie that's not taking place on a fucking Earth-like planet already, aside from that, because that has been one of my consistent complaints with the MCU basically since Phase 3, is like, stop putting segments of movies in different dimensions and in space and shit in movies, and then setting them mostly on Earth-like planets. Take me to a place that's not Earth or an Earth-like planet and stay there. And so it's, in my opinion, it's good that they're setting like 80% of the movie in the quantum realm. But more to the point, it also kind of lets Ant-Man fit in that kind of intermediary space between like Guardians, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and Doctor Strange.
Mhm.
Like he's sort of the connective tissue that connects everything,
Right.
which might be why they're introducing Kang here of all places. Then
Right.
again, to be fair, they introduced Thanos in Guardians 1, so yeah.
Well, officially, I suppose.
Well, properly, like he was cameoed before in Avengers or in Avengers 2, but like we got our first full look at Thanos in Guardians 1.
That was one of the best designs they had for him, honestly.
Honestly, I kind of wish they had stuck with the design from Avengers 1, but that's just because that version of him looked the most like the comic.
I don't disagree. I think it was the armor for Guardians 1 that I liked the most.
Yeah, no, the armor was cool. It annoyed me that they kept going back and forth on his skin pigment and how purple he was.
I agree. Like, honestly, they should have darkened him more. I totally agree with that. I'm just saying, like, the armor for him was like,
Yeah, no, his Guardians 1 armor was cool as fuck.
yeah.
And Kang, I think, is going to kind of be the same way in the sense that we kind of got alluded to him when we met Immortus Kang in Loki, but this is going to be where we actually get the here is Kang and here's what he do kind of thing.
Right. I'll talk more about Kang as we go on, just because like we really haven't seen him yet.
Yeah, I mean, he did kind of start the narration, but yeah, we haven't really gotten much of him yet.
Yeah. So, Banana. I really thought you were going to say it again.
Or rather, Ant Nana.
Shut the.
What? We stylized it for Batman. We stylized it for Evil Dead, but Ant-Man doesn't get stylization.
Okay, fine.
Talk about being an also ran character. You can't even upgrade the banana.
Okay, fair enough. And I just don't think I can say it. That's the thing. Like, pronounce it, you know.
Ant Nana.
Yeah. So.
We could help each other with that. Who are you? I'm the man who can give you the one thing you want. What's that? Time.
Okay, so Jonathan Majors is an amazing actor. I've seen him in a few things. Obviously, in Loki was where we first introduced him as like a Kang, at least.
Yeah, Immortus Kang, kind of.
Or
I guess the proper name for him was He Who Remains.
Yeah. I feel like this is going to be a Christian Bale situation with Love and Thunder. Is that basically it feels like he's acting in a totally different movie.
I don't know, because on the one hand, I think the first trailer was almost giving me Guardians of the Galaxy vibes. In fact, the first trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp gave me more Guardians of the Galaxy vibes than Guardians 3 trailer did. But this one is leaning more serious. And I think because this movie is going to be the movie that introduces Kang, they probably are going to lean more serious. And the good news is for Kang is even if this version of Kang dies at the end, which he might, Kang is the big bad for Phase 4 through 6. So he'll be back.
I'm just saying, like, even now, like, I just get this feeling from Jonathan Majors playing this version of Kang more so than I am with like the other actors.
Oh yeah, no, he's bringing his A material. He's like, I am menacing, and you will fear everything I say. Basically.
Yeah, like dude, it's just such a presence, which obviously makes sense because Kang the Conqueror and all.
Yeah, and I was actually somewhat skeptical when we met He Who Remains / Immortus and Loki that he could actually pull it off. But seeing him here, and I think that's also part of the point. Like each successive minor version of Kang dies, and every time a lesser version of Kang dies, the next version on is going to be all the more epic and intense.
Right.
As He Who Remains put it, like, wait till you meet the next version of me, kind of thing.
Wait till you meet my variants.
Yeah, and
again,
if that's kind of the underlying premise here, then I wouldn't even mind this version of Kang dying and the next version being even more. Holy shit! This guy's basically Darth Vader levels of fuck you.
Again, honestly, I hope. I don't know if they will or not, but I'm sure everyone here has seen Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and to me, that is my first introduction of Kang the Conqueror.
EMH.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing Kang much outside of the comics.
Yeah, well, he was a major player in that show.
Yeah, I remember vaguely him being in EMH, but I don't remember watching much of his arc in EMH.
Yeah.
Because you know me, I basically like dip in and out of shows based on are any of the characters I like involved yet.
Yeah.
Which basically means that I've seen all the Doctor Strange centric episodes of every Marvel show, but other than that, pretty much not.
Yeah. That was a pretty good show, Giant Troll. Something got canceled. Like they had plans to do X-Men crossovers, and I think Doctor Strange. Like they have concept art of seasons after that. I think even one had Rom Space Knight in one.
The same thing happened with Spectacular Spider-Man in relation to Ultimate Spider-Man. Like Ultimate Spider-Man wasn't terrible, but compared to freaking Spectacular Spider-Man, it was just insulting.
Right. Anyway,
and let's not even talk about the new version that isn't even as good as Ultimate was.
You know, it's actually funny. There's a YouTuber, I think I mentioned it before, but Roundtable. He actually did a reanimated scene from that show, explaining basically the problem with Marvel Spider-Man, which I think was what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that it didn't have any shading or lighting to it. It was just blank. It was just flat.
It's very much the new style of animation, like post Adventure Time Gravity Falls, where like you're not allowed to have any like depth to characters anymore.
Okay, well, what do you mean by depth?
Like I mean visually, like in terms of art style. I don't mean in terms of writing and shit.
I mean, a part of me would disagree because they had some really good animated moments in those. I won't argue like overall, maybe sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like he actually, yeah, like I said,
like compare the difference between to get what I'm getting at. Compare the difference between like Ben 10 Ultimate Alien or Alien Force versus even Omniverse versus new Ben 10 reboot, in terms of what I mean, in terms of the art styles were getting way more simpler and way more like simple. Like this may seem like a weird point to make, but like classically cartoony instead of being more solid and realistic like they were when like action cartoons were when we were kids.
Yeah, and Giant Turtle says so often great shows get canceled. At best, it's because it doesn't have a big audience. At least that makes sense, budgets and all. But also,
no, in this case, it was because Disney had just got the rights.
often it's because they want a different market or try and get something bigger or because toys didn't sell them. That's actually how Young Justice originally was canceled.
Yeah, no. In this case, though, it was because after Disney got the rights to Marvel, they basically canceled all the Marvel shows.
Well, no,
That
that doesn't make any sense because Avengers: Earth Mightiest Heroes was put on Disney XD. Like it was published on Disney XD.
Yeah, but they wanted the shows to more resemble the movies, and that's why EMH got canceled and got replaced with what's the other
Avengers
one?
Assemble.
Thank you. And that's why Spectacular Spider-Man got canceled and replaced with Ultimate Spider-Man and so on and so forth.
Right.
Which brings up the question: was that what they were originally planning for Doctor Strange with regards to the version of him from Ultimate? Because honestly, I didn't hate, like, I didn't love the version of Doctor Strange in Ultimate Spider-Man, but I didn't hate him either. Like, he was cool-ish.
The Tarantula, I really hate what they did with Omniverse and the remake. I've heard there was good things, but I just can't get over how it looks like they are marketing to 5-year-olds and more or less regress. Honestly, okay, so this
Omniverse was terrible. Omniverse was so bad.
Regress band, not just personality, but voice and appearance. Their art style. Just compare all the characters to Ultimate Alien or Alien.
Yeah.
It's.
I get where you're coming from, Dragon Turtle, because I think the biggest problem was the world building also took that same kind of hit of like the world building actually regressed rather than improving.
It's complicated for me because I watched it when it came out. Like, granted, again, I'm the youngest here.
Yeah, you were of the target age group, and you didn't have as much investment with original series Ben 10.
No, I did.
Ultimate Alien and
Are you kidding
Alien
me?
Force.
No, I watched that stuff, all that stuff. Like, I have to watch it. Just to be honest, I watched it like the whole Omniverse, like that whole thing, like I guess technically once.
Oh god, Omniverse was so bad.
I won't. Well, okay, so trying to be impartial, I'm not going to deny that it lacked in writing. I will not deny that. And obviously the retcons and stuff. I'm not like.
Okay, I think that if Omniverse had come out before Ultimate Alien, it would have aged better, because that's what it felt like. It felt like Omniverse was a step backwards, trying to recapture the energy of the original Ben 10 series, and it just didn't. After the epicness that was what I would call Ben 10's golden era, which was Ben 10, Alien Force, and then of course Ultimate Alien, it was so just why the unnecessary comedic element? Why is literally everything and everyone a joke now? Where is the interesting, threatening nature of Alien Force and Ultimate Alien? Why is Charmcaster a joke character now? Like,
yeah, that is fair. I'm just saying that it also had good prospects. Like some episodes were actually really good and stuff.
I like Rook as a character, and I like the little alien that like became the voice of the Omnitrix for a bit.
Scourge.
I think so.
Yeah.
But in any case, everything that related to the world building or the like stylization of the show just made me cringe.
Right.
Like,
Okay, that's fair.
it's funny because I like some of the like ideas that Omniverse had. Like, I like the idea that Gwen went to literally a magic college and Hex became good and became one of her professors. Like, that was a cool idea. But
I think we never saw that, right?
Huh?
I think the problem was we never saw that.
I mean, we did. It was just done in a very simplistic way. And because of the return of kind of the jokey tone from the original Ben 10 series, none of it was ever allowed to be serious. Also, right. I will never, ever, 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 ever forgive Omniverse for what they did to the wizard Bezel
Okay.
Because the Wizard Bizel, as he was set up in the original Ben 10, in Alien Force, and in Ultimate Alien, was basically the like dark gothic like version, like almost an evil alternate universe Merlin, or at least a dark shadowy alternate universe Merlin character. And then they literally turned him into an elf who favors stage illusion over practical actual magic.
Okay, that's fair. I'm not denying. I'm just saying I'm willing to. I'd say I'd be willing to rewrite it, but I feel like that's just too much for me.
Honestly, the only rewrite that Ben 10 needs from like a magic perspective is the one that I've been suggesting for years, because the biggest problem with even Alien Force was this stupid thing where, despite the fact that we know definitively that magic exists, like we've been to the dimension that it apparently hails from, even apparently Gwen can't just be a particularly gifted magic user, or can't just have a family legacy of magic users. She has to be from an alien species who apparently thrives off of magic, but for some reason doesn't approach it as magic. Which I don't even. Okay, the other thing is, I don't even mind the existence of Anodites. Like, the idea of there being basically a race of space fairies, because that's kind of what Anodites are, who are like uber masters of magic to a point that humans couldn't even master. I don't even mind that. And I don't even mind Gwen being an Anodite. What I mind is that Anodites kind of function in the show as a replacement for magic, or the idea that humans thought this was all magic, but in actuality it's just whatever Anodites taught them. Like, that was the part that I thought was stupid. Especially when you consider the previously established canon where where the magic happens had this problem too, when they revealed that Hex and Charmcaster come from another dimension. It kind of makes the idea of a just normal human magic user seem either impossible or stupid by comparison. Especially when you consider that in the Ben 10 original series episode Change of Face, Charmcaster is established to have a vendetta against Salem, Massachusetts. And there is no conceivable reason why she would have that vendetta if she is organically originally from Legerdemain. The way I headcanon this to fix the fact that humans can use magic, and that normal humans can use magic, and that Anodites aren't like the source of magic or anything. The way I retconned it to fix it is Charmcaster and her family were originally from Salem, Massachusetts, and when shit hit the fan with regards to witch trials, they used the portal spell, the same portal spell we see Gwen and Darkstar using later, to escape into Legerdemain, and Charmcaster, Hex, and Spellbinder are the descendants of the escapees from Salem who escaped to Legerdemain. That would fix a lot of things, because number one, it would make sure that normal humans can use magic, regardless of any family bloodline nonsense. Number two, it gives Charmcaster and Hex a reason to escape back to Earth later, when Ethwacia takes over Legerdemain. Number three, it explains where the fuck all the magical artifacts came from that are just on Earth. And number four, it explains why Hex goes looking for the Arcomina Book of Spells and the Charms of Bizel, and it explains why Charmcaster would have a vendetta against Salem. And it makes sure that normal humans can use magic without the need for Anodite shenanigans, or interdimensional ones.
So Giant Turtle asked.
Anyway, sorry.
So Giant Turtle asked, I thought they walked that back, saying that normal magic does exist and being an Anodite just gives her more juice to work with.
They kind of did and kind of didn't. And then they started doing this thing where Charmcaster would use magic, and Gwen would like condescend to her and say, "What you call magic isn't really magic; it's just mana."
Okay, I think we can agree there were some stupid decisions later on in Ben 10. In the
Yeah,
world.
the big problem is that it creates this inconsistent world building. Where is it alien or is it magic or is it both or is it neither? It's this whole thing.
It's really fair. I grant you. I'm just saying, like, I think there were some cool ideas in Omniverse that honestly could have been done better.
Yeah, like I don't mind the idea of meeting Bizelle. In fact, that was something that I wanted ever since I was a little kid. Like ever since first watching Lucky Girl, I was like, I want to see this badass wizard Bizelle from like the 16th century. And then we met him, and he was just this annoying elf who favored stage like illusion over actual magic for some reason. And I'm like even Rook was like, "You have seen real magic. Why the fuck are you impressed by stage magic?" Yeah, like Rook was my spirit animal in that episode because he was like, "Why on earth would you care about like stage illusion if you literally are the master of real magic?" Anyway, it's Nana.
Yep.
I can rewrite existence and shatter timelines. You cannot trust him.
I don't care who this guy is. I just lost so much.
I have nothing really to say.
Yeah, this is a really cool idea. I mean, the plot is rather obvious. Kang is gonna offer to give him the 5 years he lost with Cassie back. He's gonna renege on the deal, or Scott is gonna have to do something immoral to get the deal done, and he's gonna not be able to do it. And then he and Kang are gonna come to blows over it, and obviously Ant-Man is gonna have to sacrifice his happiness to make sure that Kang gets stopped. Like that all is very obvious. But honestly, I'm fine with a plot that's obvious if it's handled well. And honestly, as much as it does annoy me sometimes when trailers give away too much of the plot, I would rather a trailer that gives away too much of the plot than a trailer that doesn't give away enough of the plot, because the purpose of a trailer is supposed to be to advertise the product you're offering. And if I don't know enough about the product you're offering, why would I consume it?
I also want to point out Marvel does a lot of like false marketing.
This is also true.
Granted, I don't like the story itself. I'm cool with because honestly, I think that's what's going to work. So, all right, Dragon Troll. Regarding himself, I'm actually not against the idea of a wizard favoring stage magic. Sort of sounds like the old "don't just use magic to brute force solve all problems" thing. I guess the execution was anything else, though.
No, the execution was he got bored with real magic one day, apparently because it doesn't have enough rules, which is also stupid because that goes against everything we've learned about magic in this setting so far. Because to be fair to original series Ben 10, Ultimate Alien, or Alien Force aside from the Anodite thing and the Legerdemain thing and Ultimate Alien, they were always very good about their portrayal of magic. Obviously, they picked and chose what kind of magic they used. Like their magic was very almost Scandinavian in the sense that it was very rune based and stuff. But I'm okay with that. Like it like as long as it's a version of magic that is recognizable and functions the way it's supposed to, I'm okay if settings pick and choose. They were always very good about establishing that magic does have rules and that you do need specific things in order to make it function and shit. So like the idea that in the Ben 10 universe, Bizelle would just one day decide real magic doesn't have enough rules. I need to study stage magic because stage magic is all about rules. And I'm like, excuse you.
Honestly, I could see a more logical reasoning being that it's just a fun hobby for a actual wizard to do. like
Like
Zatanna,
I could almost see the argument of like he masters magic so highly that he doesn't have anywhere else to go, and then he realizes, hey, they they call this thing that isn't magic magic. Why don't I go and study that?
right? I was also going to point out what Zatanna said to Batman in Justice League Unlimited, with adding a little what was it? Was it pizzazz or dazzle?
Razzle dazzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the episode where Wonder Woman gets turned into a pig,
Yeah.
she says, "Usually I play it straight, but for the closer I always throw in a little bit of razzle dazzle."
Stage magic isn't even about rules; it's about manipulation. The only rules are to keep people's attention and seed misconceptions / assumptions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very stupid, especially because the obvious answer was so obvious that it literally became an anticlimax at the end of the episode when Gwen actually uses a trick, like she psychologically manipulates Charmcaster into essentially using her own magic to free them from her bag. And then Bizelle looks over and goes, "Huh, stage misdirection and real magic. That's an interesting combination." To which my response is, "You're telling me you were a millennia old master of real magic, and yet the concept of combining real magic with some kind of trickery or misdirection never occurred to you, even as you were also studying stage illusion and misdirection. You are the lamest magical practitioner in the history of anything ever." Also, there's the implication that in Omniverse that Bizelle is the father of all magic, which I'm sorry, I know this is, breaking the rules of the setting a little bit by bringing in real history, but we know definitively that Neanderthals used magic in some rudimentary way with regards to cave paintings, so nothing resembling a human could possibly be the father of magic. Magic predates Homo sapiens, period. Granted, Bizelle is an elf, so maybe, but still, it annoyed me.
Giant Turtle, I'd actually have an Archmage love stage magic because it helps me train to do more with less magic, as in get more out of it.
And again, it's the same principle of combining like the principles of misdirection or prestidigitation with real magic kind of thing, of like using it subtly, using it indirectly kind of thing. Yeah, I understand that rationale. Granted, I personally viscerally hate stage magic because it poisons the fucking well.
Okay.
And also because so many stage illusionists are also professional skeptics who basically not only do they have to undermine the possibility that magic even exists, they can't even allow for that anything outside of their not magic, but we're calling it magic shit exists. So, i.e., I'm not even going to allow you occultists to actually believe that there is real magic because I need to be. It's basically what happens when that kid who needs to tell everyone that Santa isn't real on the playground grows up and
Dalton,
continues undermining everyone's shit.
Dalton.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Aunt Nana.
Yeah. 1 sec. Okay.
He can give us a second chance. Let me make this easy for you. You will bring me what I need.
So I'm gonna say this. This is a lot more creative than the first one we saw.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons for that is because the Quantum Realm CGI wasn't ready, and they've had more time to work on it since.
I don't get that. I never get that. I really don't.
Why they would release a trailer when the CGI wasn't ready?
Yeah. Yes. it is worth knowing that apparently the studio was getting more and more involved in the show since partway through Alien Force. Eh,
Yeah. And I mean, it's also worth noting that the original creator of Ben 10 died in between Ultimate Alien and Omniverse, which might be the reason why it's bad, but
rest in peace,
still.
Dwayne.
Huh?
Rest in peace, Dwayne McDuffie.
Yep. And thank you for the many, many cases of awesome world building over your career, sir.
Right. Well, I don't think he was the original creator of Ben 10. I think he was one of the writers who helped it.
I think he was the original creator of Ben 10. I know he was one of the original creative forces behind all of Man of Action. So I don't know how much direct involvement he had with each show, but I'm pretty sure all of the like premises and world building of all the various shows were his idea.
Okay.
Except for Generator X, because Generator X was actually an adaptation of a comic.
I do remember hearing something about that, yeah.
But even then, he did adapt the world building because it's not exactly the same from the comic to the show.
I honestly, that is one of the shows I regret not being able to watch more of because it was like with Tron Uprising. It's like the schedule for it was so weird.
Yeah, it's one of those shows that the network decided to kill it by way of scheduling, and it should have gone on a lot longer.
I remember the crossover.
Yeah, the Ultimate Alien Generator X crossover was cool.
Heroes United.
Yeah. Speaking of crossovers I really liked, for as stupid as Omniverse was, and for as much as I would have rather this crossover happened back in Ultimate Alien or Alien Force, I did enjoy seeing the Secret Saturdays again.
I actually really dug their designs, actually.
Yeah, and again, all I would want is, if that's how good they look in Omniverse, how awesome would they have looked in the style of Alien Force and Ultimate Alien? I really, really loved the Secret Saturdays. Speaking of awesome things from Man of Action that Dwayne McDuffie was involved with.
I'll be fully honest, I never really got to watch that show.
Okay, you need to go back and watch it at some point then.
I watched like the first season, but I never got to watch the other season.
You didn't get to watch the parts when it got good.
First season was pretty good.
I mean, the first season was pretty good, but I mean, comparatively, like Secret Saturdays was one of those shows where the first season was basically a proof of concept, and then once they got to season 2, they were like, okay, now let's unravel this awesome world building we have.
All right, that's fair. To be fair, I think I was just I had a lot of things going on in my life at that time, so I never really got to really sit down and watch it.
The scheduling was also really weird for Secret Saturdays, which annoyed me.
Why was that really a thing? Why was that always a thing, like scheduling?
Because Cartoon Network didn't know what they had half the time.
Brainstorm a project for you. Ben 10, Secret Saturdays, and Generator X all in one crossover. That is...
Honestly, the only problem I have with the crossover from Generator X and Ben 10 is that, I mean, obviously, it kind of has to be this way because part of Generator X's premise is world-altering apocalypse. But I wish there was some way they could exist in the same universe. As much as I enjoy the crossover and crossing between universes, I do prefer things when it's all in the same universe. That's why I actually really like the idea that Secret Saturdays and Ben 10 exist in the same universe.
Honestly, they work. They have very similar.
They fit together really well, which is something that I was surprised that worked when Omniverse did it, because things like that almost never worked in Omniverse, did it? But that just goes to show how awesome those two shows are, that they can work together so well.
Anyway,
Though I want to see Doc Saturday's head explode when he gets exposed to the magic university from Omniverse, because he was so anti-magic the whole time.
honestly, that show was a lot like, I could say somewhat like, it was like a Fantastic Four show.
I mean, it was. The cool part of Secret Saturdays was, of course, all like cryptids and folklore and stuff. I mean, obviously, I of all people was geeking the shit. I was geeking out when they referenced ancient Sumeria and Kerr and like Kumari Kandam and all that business. I was just like, yes, this show is my favorite. The
Right.
only problem I had was because of the conceit of the secret scientists. They were so anti-magic, and I'm like, I was kind of with Drew, where it's like they both exist, you idiots. I mean, we live in a world with all this mystical shit, and you're going to pretend like magic doesn't real? What the hell?
Venture, it's the exact opposite with me. I prefer the universe hopping. Agree to disagree, I suppose. Actually, this is a weird thing because you guys kind of seem to be the. I'm in the middle. I kind of prefer both. I think both are cool and have their merits.
I'm just always going to be a whore for world building, and I always will favor more complex worlds. So, in my opinion, coexistence is my default favorite thing. Like, I like when multiple different elements of things can coexist. That's why I get really anal retentive whenever it's a magic versus science thing, because it's like, no, fuck you. They both exist. They're both equally valid. Fuck off.
We have the spectrum, says Dragon Troll. Yeah, we do. Anyway, I do want to get through this trailer pretty quick.
Yeah, so Aunt Nana.
Yeah.
Or everything you call life will end.
This is all my fault.
You may not want her to watch this. We had a deal.
I will say I was very skeptical of the idea that Kang could be the next Thanos. Jonathan Majors is really helping me here, because especially if the trend continues and like this isn't final Kang, this is just the next highest up iteration of Kang. And he keeps getting more and more badass as things go along. This is gonna, like, Kang could actually surpass, if that's the trend they go with. If this isn't final Kang, this is just next most badass up Kang.
Right.
So Kang could actually be better than Thanos if this trend continues.
So, like I said, I honestly kind of get the feeling that Jonathan Majors, like, I just get that feeling from Jonathan Majors that he's acting in a completely different movie.
And unfortunately, I think that's probably going to be the vibe for a while, like until we get into the lead up to like Kang Dynasty, and then it's going to be, oh shit, Kang, this badass motherfucker who has existed throughout all of our wacky side adventures is actually a massive threat, even more so maybe than Thanos.
Although I don't think they will ever have the balls to do Iron Lad.
I mean, I don't know, because they're setting up Young Avengers. They've been setting up Young Avengers for a while. We've got Wiccan, we've got Speed. Scar might take the place of Hulkling, which is going to make me sad, but they might do that. Like, they've got Kamala Khan, they've got Riri, they've got America, so they seem to be trending towards either Young Avengers or Champions or some combination of the two. So they're probably going to do Iron Lad at some point, especially post. I could actually see that kind of being his redemption arc of like once big bad universe destroying Kang is defeated, he gets reincarnated again and becomes Iron Lad and essentially becomes the good version of himself again.
To be fair, time travel is confusing as all fuck. So
I mean, to be the most fair, this is supposed to be Nathaniel Richards, Reed Richards is 3,000-year descendant, and I can't help but notice that Jonathan Majors is very black, and John Krasinski is very not. So some kind of crossbreeding has to happen in the 3,000 years between Fantastic Four and
Honestly,
Kang to
I'll
make
be-
that work.
I'll be fully honest. I don't think you or I look the same as we do from our ancestors. I mean, you probably a little more so than me.
I mean, this is fair, but I'm just saying, like, I don't necessarily want a full family tree between John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic and Kang, but at the same time,
Well, there's also
someone needs to at least address the issue.
Well, there's also a thing of like John Krasinski played another Earth. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
but he's coming back, and most alternate universe versions are played by the same actor. They've confirmed this.
Honestly, I kind of want that, but
Honestly, I can see him play a more serious, more actualized version of Mr. Fantastic. The main reason he was a goof in Multiverse of Madness, apart from the fact that Reed Richards is kind of always the stupidest smart person ever to exist. Apart from that, is because when we do multiverse stories, we always end up killing characters off, and we needed to show how badass and horror movie villainous Wanda was. So,
fair enough. I just kind of like the story that I am familiar with of Iron Lad is a boy who is trying to defy his fate, right? But ultimately has to go through that fate.
I mean, I think they're probably gonna do different with Iron Lad and kind of make it a trying to redeem the sins of my alternate universe selves kind of thing.
Right. I again, I'm just maybe it's just me. Maybe I just like the idea of like the kind of.
I mean, that would be an interesting story to do. I just don't think they're gonna have the room to do it in the MCU.
That's completely fair. I admit that. It's completely fair. Again,
I mean, even doing the I'm gonna redeem my alternate universe reincarnated selves would be a step up in terms of complexity for their storytelling. So
it's just
even I might be being a little bit overly charitable to the MCU at this point, but I really hope not.
It's personal preference. That's my thing. Okay, personal preference on that.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Aunt Nana.
Aunt Nana.
You thought you could win. I don't have to win. Wait.
And I really don't.
I'll say something, but yeah, we have to let him finish the line first, because I have something to say about this line.
Mm-hmm. Aunt Nana.
Aunt Nana.
Both just have to lose. I'm sorry, Cassie.
Okay, so regarding that line, that I don't have to win, we just both have to lose line, it's very, very similar to Doctor Strange's bargain scene line where Dormammu says, "You will never win," and Strange responds, "No, but I can lose again and again and again forever, and that makes you my prisoner." So I'm tempted to fake a geek freak out and go, "You stole that from Doctor Strange," but at the same time, like I said, Ant-Man kind of to me is the connective tissue of the MCU and kind of exists in between Doctor Strange, Guardians, and the Fantastic Four / X-Men. So it it kind of makes sense to me that he would wind up having the same mentality, especially when you consider that they both, in Strange's case by way of the Time Stone, in Ant-Man's case by way of Quantum Realm, are very focused on like time and the sort of fatalistic nature of some things are meant to be kind of thing. So like I get it. And also it lets the heroes of the MCU kind of have not the same moral compass, but at least consistent principles of like I can see at some point in either Kang Dynasty or not Secret Wars. Yes, Secret Wars. I can see Doctor Strange and Ant-Man kind of bonding over that, having similar mentalities with regard to that of like, it's not my job to win, it's just my job to keep you from winning kind of thing.
Right. I was trying to pull up a good image of the costume. I mean, all in all, it's actually one of the better MCU designs of a comic costume.
Mm-hmm.
I think because a lot of people always brought up like how the face looked, which was like kind of very uncanny. Which I mean, granted, like you actually think about how the helmet actually works for Kang, it would look very, like in reality, it would look very unnerving or uncanny.
Yeah. And I mean, he does come from the far-flung future of like the year 3000, I believe. So like,
and I guess maybe it's just me, but honestly, I kind of prefer him without it. Don't get me wrong. I've always argued for like actors being more in like masks and stuff, so they could.
Yeah, accurate costumes and stuff. But honestly, Jonathan Majors is giving off enough villain vibes that I don't absolutely need him to be in the thing.
Yeah, like honestly, like they even have a makeup of like him having a scar on his face, which like gives enough detail about like his actual, like a
backstory.
Backstory, like character and stuff, and it's just like I've seen people like tear this a new one. Like honestly, I don't have any like ill will towards it. It's fine.
Yeah, like honestly, the most I can say for this is this might end up being kind of disposable, like most of the Ant-Man movies do. But honestly, there's a good chance this might. I think there's a good chance, regardless, that this might end up being the best Ant-Man movie. Not that that's a very high bar, but also that it might end up actually being a good start to Phase 5. Granted, we will shortly have to deal with the sequel to Captain Marvel, which will probably shit all over this, but whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. Like honestly, I think the really outstanding part for the whole movie is going to be Jonathan Majors as Kang, which honestly is not surprising.
And like I've been saying for a while, I've been interested in the quantum realm. So if all this movie gives us is it sets up Kang to be a really interesting and intimidating villain, and it lets us finally explore the quantum realm, or at least stay off Earth or Earth-like planets for a movie, I'm okay with that. Like if that's all this ends up being is another Ant-Man movie that really delves deeply into the quantum realm and gives us a good setup for Kang, that's really all this movie needs to be for me to think it's pretty good.
Okay, so this is interesting.
And hopefully in the future, if this does well, Marvel will learn the lesson of stay off Earth and Earth-like planets and actually explore the interesting dimensions of your universe for a bit.
So, Giant Turtle, I go further than that, Brainstormer. I think live action is far overrated and CGI/animation is superior, both because it has less limitations, it can convey more with the style, and actors get less egos. I mean, yeah, I honestly like animation, maybe a little more than.
See, I disagree with you. I disagree with you, Dragon Turtle, because that's the thing. Because you can do anything with animation, I find it more impressive if you can actually translate animation or drawings into live action. Because it's more impressive when you make it 3-dimensional and tangible than it is when it's animated. because especially when you're talking about comics, because comics are already drawn.
Yeah.
So when you make an animated adaptation of a comic, it's just taking the drawings and making them move, basically.
Okay, so I'm kind of in the middle of this, to be fully honest. While I don't disagree with the kind of especially the last part, which is actors get less egos when like they do voices and stuff. And
Mhm.
honestly, a lot less work when you do voicing in animation. To be fair,
Honestly, voice actors should probably have more ego than they currently do, if anything.
I don't know if I agree with that. But so my thing is honestly, I just want good stuff, be it live action or animation, right? As long as there's effort put into it and there's creativity and just.
I mean, I agree with you in principle, but at this point, we've seen them do so well in animation that I actually do want these things to be translated to live action. I actually want now that, especially now that CGI has developed to such a point that you can basically make whole settings from CGI in live action settings. Now that you can basically do anything with CGI, I want the transition. I want to take the images from the comics, filter them through animation, and put them in live action. I want to see them actually there, actually tangible, especially the more out there crazy ones like Doctor Strange or like Jack Kirby style cosmic shit.
Okay, that's completely fair. I get that. Again, I'm just in the middle of this because, again, I just want good things. Honestly, we really need more good things. Like honestly, I still want to see Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I've heard a lot of good things about that. Haven't seen it yet, and I'm also looking forward to. There's like there are a couple live action films that are coming out that just look fun. I think Cocaine Bear was one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but Dragon Turtle, that's exactly why I want to see it in live action, because the fact that it's harder to make live action work for this material is exactly why I want to see it done, because putting in the effort advances like film as a medium and makes it like each time something that we couldn't previously translate to live action is translated to live action, it gets a little bit easier to translate that kind of stuff into live action, which allows us to be even more creative in live action. And honestly, I hope for a day not too distant from here when we can make things using CGI and live action that we couldn't previously even imagine existing in live action.
okay, so yeah, I think we can all agree no Netflix live action adaptations.
Yeah, Netflix can just. I mean, they ripped out a piece of my heart when they butchered Death Note. They killed something in me when they did Cowboy Bebop, and then they did Sandman, and now I want to burn their offices to the ground.
So that's actually funny. You guys bring up the Netflix thing, because well, one thing. Does anyone here know about Corridor Digital?
The name is familiar. The content, I don't know.
They're YouTube filmmakers that have done like really cool shorts. Hell, even like some things that were sponsored by game companies and stuff, like short films for advertising games. But just really creative filmmakers that are honestly kind of striking out on their own because they really can't get anywhere in Hollywood currently. I really recommend checking their stuff out. Right now, they go by Corridor, like again on YouTube. So, and they have this secondary channel called Corridor Crew, which they do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and they also have these series where like they have professionals from the actual from Hollywood that are like their friends that do stunts, visual effects, and other things, and talk about the tricks of the trade of stuff, like watch clips from movies and TV shows, talk about how they could how it's done, which is like
Mhm.
something I'm super interested in.
Yeah, but Dragon Turtle, that's the problem. The problem is because of the freedom that animation provides. Animation is kind of movies on easy mode, and also there are some people who will not,
Okay,
for whatever reason,
Emily?
ever. There are some people who for whatever reason will not ever engage with animated material. They won't. They don't buy that something can look good in live action until they actually see it in live action.
Okay, Ken. So,
And therefore,
guys,
even just to prove it to those people, I want to see most things that were once animated turned into live action, done properly, obviously.
okay. So the thing before I was interrupted, they like earlier today they actually released a video talking about anime adaptations, specifically stuff from Netflix like Death Note and Cowboy Bebop. Which have you guys actually seen like the Netflix Cowboy Bebop thing? Anyone here seen that?
Yes, I have. For those two things you will bleed, for Sandman you will die, Netflix.
Yeah, they and also Ghost in the Shell, which I actually saw the live action version. I've never seen like the animated stuff of that.
Ghost in the Shell was actually pretty good as far as anime adaptations go.
I thought it was fine. I think mainly I was kind of younger back then, so and I've judged it on its own merits because I never saw the actual stuff, but yeah, there's a video they made, and I'll probably post it in Discord if anyone wants me to, like later. But yeah, they talked about how difference there is in terms of the adaptations and why a lot of adaptations of like anime kind of suck.
Mm-hmm. I think anime adaptations are in roughly the same place as video game adaptations. Of like, for a while, because Hollywood at large didn't see them as real art, you have to kind of put in the work to convince them
Right.
that it can work.
So here's the weird
And so for every good anime adaptation, we get a little bit closer to the era where literally anything can be. And I think we are slowly getting better with regards to anime adaptations because I mean, Alita Battle Angel was fucking amazing.
I think I still have. Well, I had it on DVD and I think I lost it.
Here's an interesting question for y'all. Detective Pikachu the movie. Do you consider it a video game adaptation more or an anime adaptation more? Because it kind of, for me, occupies this kind of weird space where it's both a video game adaptation and an anime adaptation.
To be fully honest, I've never seen it.
You've never seen Detective Pikachu?
I've heard about it and I've seen like videos about it, but I've never watched it.
You should watch it. It's good. It's very good.
Okay,
Now,
so-
granted, Pokemon was never my absolute favorite franchise. I always was a Yu-Gi-Oh and Digimon stan more than I was a Pokemon stan. But
Yu-Gi-Oh all the way. Like, dude, I still have some cards.
yeah, me too. I have a whole book full of them, including a holographic Dark Magician, which is probably my favorite card of the entire of like all the Yu-Gi-Oh cards I have is the
Honestly,
Dark Magician.
okay, so in terms like just base idea, I would honestly argue that Detective Pikachu is video game because that's how they first started out, right? Like as a video game, Pokemon.
I mean, the video game and the anime kind of existed concordantly. Like Japan came out with the video games and the anime roughly at the same time.
Okay, that's.
I think actually the cards came first.
I would actually be interested if anyone would do an adaptation of Yu-Gi-Oh, a good one, obviously.
Yeah, obviously it would have to be done well, but yeah, a good adaptation of Yu-Gi-Oh would kick all the ass.
Right. I've never watched JoJo Dragon Turtle.
Add it to the list of things that when we meet him in real life, we have to tie him down and make him watch.
Rephrase that. I am aware of it, and I've watched videos about it, and I've watched clips of it. I'll be honest, it was never really my thing.
JoJo's is awesome and bonkers.
Like,
I mean, it's
I'm aware of that, but it's just like I never could get into it.
I think by rights, Dragon Turtle, anyone who's a massive fan of JoJo's is not a stan. They are a stand. For obvious reasons.
I get that reference. I do. I also remember, like, I think there were live action adaptations of JoJo, not American or Western.
Yeah, no, Japan I think might have did some, but the problem is Japan has the wherewithal to be loyal, but they don't have the budget, and America has the budget, but we don't know the first thing about how to use that budget half the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. The weirdest thing is the closest I've seen in terms of a good Yu-Gi-Oh adaptation in terms of live action. What was it? Were like the live action trailers from the early 2000s. Were like, it was really popular because like they had CGI or like prosthetic.
Dragon Turtle, if you haven't watched JoJo's yet, then you probably don't get that joke. But trust me, when you get to, I think it's the third iteration of JoJo's, you will find that joke hilarious.
America also hasn't figured out you need to hire people who don't hate something and its fan base.
Well, I mean that's just like the Western approach to art in general in this day and age of like they only view art as a means to an end, and they actually view anyone who does regard IPs with any kind of intrinsic value or sincerity as either childishly naive, maniacally evil, retardedly incompetent, or most commonly all three.
I will be fully honest. I honestly, legitimately think a Yu-Gi-Oh live action adaptation would be the best way to bridge. Like it's honestly like it's the story itself. Like if we're talking like first season of Yu-Gi-Oh, right, which is like
the Pegasus and the history of the cards and etc.
Yeah.
And of course the Millennium items, which I so much wanted one as a kid.
Actually,
the Millennium items were my favorite.
The Millennium, not even that. Honestly, that could be a second movie, like an Empire Strikes Back for Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. The arc with Yugi and Kaiba, you know.
Honestly, and this is Yu-Gi-Oh heresy, but I never cared about Kaiba.
So, full disclosure, the first Yu-Gi-Oh I ever watched was GX.
Well, I mean, you are young. You are very young.
I watched the other, I mean, okay, so it's a weird thing for me because I remember watching the original Yu-Gi-Oh, but I never got to watch it fully, and I remember like just sitting down and watching GX mostly, and I really dug because it's me. I dug the superheroes deck like theme.
Yeah.
The elemental heroes, I think.
I was the same way with Pegasus's Toon deck. The idea of there being a card that could literally change the mechanics of the actual monsters was just so cool to me.
Yeah. Also, Pegasus was a really interesting villain.
Pegasus is awesome, and I wanted his Millennium Eye.
You would do a full Odin, wouldn't you?
I mean, unfortunately, that's just how the Millennium Eye has to be done. So no. Unfortunately, I would. But then again, I also have a lazy eye, and an eye that I'm like half blind in, so I don't think I would be missing that much.
Jantrell's never seen Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay, so we're tying Dragon Turtle to a chair and making him watch shit.
Okay, to be fair, I will say the first series, it had that weird thing of like it ran on too long.
The problem with the first season is there was a lot of filler in between the plot centric episodes,
Mhm.
like a lot.
They fuck, I remember Beyblade. Granted, I saw like one of the later.
Yeah, you wouldn't remember the first one that came out like even before I was of cartoon watching age. You would remember the like
Metal
2010 2011 version, I think.
Metal Fusion, Metal Fury.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Really just
I think we both were of the age to watch Bakugan, though. I think.
oh, dude, I had those.
I remember my little brother had them, but he didn't watch the show, whereas I watched the show. So he would have these and not know a thing about them, and I knew about them, but I was long past the desire of ever wanting toys. So like he had the toys, but I had the knowledge about them,
Right.
which is very weird.
I'll be honest. Like my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh series is 5Ds.
That doesn't surprise me for you, actually. I, on the other hand, think Yu-Gi-Oh went downhill as soon as the original cast, i.e., as soon as Yu-Gi-Oh wasn't about Yu-Gi anymore, I skipped. Like I watched 5Ds because it was interesting. Like I like the idea of like the generation after Yu-Gi. There's this university where people go to study
No,
duel monsters,
no.
and I really like the houses being
It's not 5Ds.
based on the Egyptian god cards.
That's not.
But at the same time, like after Yugi, I was just like, nope, it's
No.
not about Yugi anymore or the mythology, so I'm out.
No, that's not 5Ds. That's GX.
Oh, right, 5Ds was the one with the motorcycles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember starting to watch that one, but it couldn't hold me.
The weirdest thing is they run to a point. They keep getting new series that they really just it's a weird thing.
Again, after Yugi and company were gone, I was just like, it's not even about the mythology of the game anymore. What the hell?
I actually tried writing my own story for Yu-Gi-Oh.
Here's a question for you, because I know you know Yu-Gi-Oh. If you had the option of taking any of the 7 Millennium items, which one would it be? Which one would you take?
You're gonna have to refresh my memory on the Millennium items.
Eye is reading minds. Rod is mind control. Puzzle is soul control / unlocking the gate of the duel monsters. Ring is like sense of direction, but also minor sorcery because of the spirit of the Millennium Ring. Key allows you to unlock people's minds / souls and like walk around in people's minds. Necklace allows you to see the future, and scales, I believe, allows you to know the worth of people's souls.
Probably the scales.
That somehow doesn't surprise me for you,
Oh,
actually.
that or the puzzle.
I would either go with the Millennium Necklace or the Millennium Ring, and I'm only going with the Millennium Ring just because I feel like me and the spirit of the Millennium Ring would get along, even though he's technically kind of evil.
Why motorcycles? To be fair, it was kind of a gimmick they had. Like it was like they treated it like stock car racing, like with duels.
Yeah, every season after the original cast was no longer the main cast, really, like they kept having to reinvent the gimmicks, which is, it's weird to me that they did 5D what they did with 5Ds with the motorcycles thing, because they already had an alternative to Duel Monsters that was established way back in, I think, season 1, which was the Dungeon Dice Monsters.
Yeah,
Speaking of characters that never got nearly enough respect, I really felt like they never respected Duke Devlin very much.
Duke Devlin. That's the guy with the dual dice monsters.
He was the guy who created Dungeon Dice Monsters.
Okay. Yeah, but honestly, adaptation-wise, Yu-Gi-Oh has the most potential to work for a Western audience.
Yeah, I think it genuinely could work pretty well if they adapted it well.
Yeah.
And Pegasus is a threatening enough villain that he would be an amazing he would have an amazing presence for I mean you'd have to get someone who was amazing as an actor to play him, but honestly, if I had my druthers, Michael Sheen. Guy who played Aro in Twilight.
He also played Aziraphale, right?
I think so. Yeah, he would play a really good Pegasus.
I don't know if anyone's seen this show. It's been a couple of years. It's called Prodigal Son, and Martin Sheen plays a guy called can't remember his name, but
Michael Sheen, not Martin.
I said Michael Sheen.
No, you said Martin.
No, I said. Oh fuck! I know what I said.
We have it on tape. We can play it back.
But I'm fairly certain I said Michael.
You didn't. I was correcting you.
I'm right now picturing the Strangle You.
Dragon Turtle, please verify this so he doesn't kill me.
But Martin Whitley. That was the character he. Okay, so I think I might.
Yeah, you Freudian slipped it, I think.
Yeah, that's my bad. Who was like a serial killer called the Surgeon, and he had just like this very. I could see him playing Pegasus is what I mean.
Yeah, everything I've seen him in suggests to me that he could be an amazing Pegasus.
Is it Pegasus Maximilian or Maximilian Pegasus?
Maximilian is his first name, Maximilian Pegasus.
Okay.
Although most often he just gets called Pegasus.
Right. No, we cleared it up. I mixed up two names of an actor playing a character that's very similar.
He was talking about Michael Sheen, and he accidentally said Martin Sheen, and he didn't believe me when I corrected him.
Yeah. But yeah. Don't get me wrong. I think you would have to use the names from the English dub translation.
I mean, yeah. Any adaptation of anime, at least the ones that have been adapted and westernized, would have to be the Americanized version. Especially Yu-Gi-Oh! Because if you actually read the manga of Yu-Gi-Oh!, it is sadistic as fuck.
Yeah, I heard about that. I do also want to mention the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! I believe passed. Yeah, he did pass away.
I believe so, yes.
Saving the lives of people that were stuck in a flood, I believe.
Yes, because anime writers are now anime protagonists.
Yeah.
That is now a thing.
But again, may peace be given to that man, because he created something really fun that a lot of people have enjoyed, and also
yeah, I mean to be fair, the adaptation that we grew up with bears almost no resemblance to the, again, previously mentioned dark as fuck, like NC-17 levels of dark.
Also, apparently there was a
manga that he made.
Also, apparently there was a Dungeons and Dragons arc in the manga.
I think that was adapted into Dungeon Dice Monsters. That's why they're called Dungeon Dice Monsters.
But yeah. Again, like I would say, like the weirdest thing is I could also see Cowboy Bebop. It could have really worked if people actually understood the fucking material.
I mean, the same is true of Death Note. I mean, basically do a noir mystery series and Bob's Your Uncle. But unfortunately, that would require knowing, caring, and understanding about the source material, which appears to be the default problem of Hollywood in general, is they either don't know, don't care, or don't wish to know or care about any given IP. Or resent the notion that they should know, care, or otherwise.
Anyway, we have been at this for a while, and I am actually starting to get tired. So,
Yep.
With that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidas day, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Believe in the heart of the cards and fuck off.